Chapter 12:27. Yang Chendong's gaze swept across the two of them, before he said, "In view of the outstanding performance of the Liaodong Cavalry Regiment in the attack on Tuliefan City, they will be awarded a first-class merit. The soldiers who died will be compensated, and the soldiers who are still alive will be given jobs. The rest will be promoted by 3 ranks. Regiment Commander Tong Long and Deputy Regiment Commander Zhao Xing have performed valiantly, and will be promoted to Liaodong Cavalry Division. They will be allowed to lead 10,000 soldiers, and will be independent of the other armies. Once the order is given, they will be given priority to choose from the captives, and will rebuild the army's prestige." Yang Chendong's voice reverberated throughout the room, causing Tong Long and Zhao Xing's eyes to light up. When they heard that they could rebuild the army, and change from a regiment to a division, the two of them were excited. After the order was given, the two of them immediately knelt on the ground and said in unison, "Yes, Your Majesty." This time, all the soldiers will be given priority to be recruited from the captives of the battle. As for the regiment commander, I will make the arrangements for you. There is only one request, and that is to form the army as soon as possible. There will be a big battle ahead. Yang Chendong looked at the two of them, his eyes filled with hope as he spoke. "Yes, Your Majesty, don't worry. We will not let you down. Please watch our performance." At this time, both Tong Long and Zhao Xing were extremely excited. They had thought that they would lose their positions, and would be suppressed. However, they did not expect that in the face of military merits, Yang Chendong would treat everyone equally. This time, they were confident. In the future, when they encountered a tough battle, they would know how to perform better. This was also Yang Chendong's goal. As his power grew, his territory grew, and his army grew. He did not have enough people in his hands. This meant that he needed to rope in some of the people who were previously enemies, but were knowledgeable, to work for him. However, a surrendered general was still a surrendered general. No matter how sincere he was, it was inevitable that some people would have doubts. This time, he had used the opportunity of Tong Long and Zhao Xing's great victory to increase the rewards. He wanted to show everyone that as long as they had the ability, as long as they made great contributions, they would receive the same treatment as everyone else and be rewarded as well. As for Tong Long and Zhao Xing, after receiving the order to rebuild the Liaodong Cavalry Division, their injuries seemed to have mostly healed, and they immediately began to prepare. The two of them were originally talented, and what they lacked was an opportunity to display their talents. This time, not only Tong Long's Liaodong Cavalry Division, but Su He's new army also began to prepare their replacements. After the battle, they had lost almost an entire division, and needed to replenish their numbers. Yang Chendong had fully considered this problem, and immediately said that if there were not enough people among the captives, they could recruit soldiers from Turpan City. He had long heard reports from intelligence personnel that Turpan had dismissed some of the experienced soldiers to return home to farm. This was originally a manifestation of hiding soldiers among the people, and now it was convenient for Yang Chendong. If there were not enough soldiers, the first batch of 100,000 soldiers from Shaowei province would arrive. At that time, there would be suitable people to choose from among them. However, because of this, Yang Chendong had no choice but to stop attacking. Just Turpan City alone had 200,000 people, and it was truly worthy of being the capital of a country. It would also take time to move all these people out and replace them with people from other areas. Fortunately, when Su He told all of the people in the city that he would not change his promise of giving them land, and on the contrary, there would be more land in other places, the voices of the people became much quieter. It was not enough to just give carrots. Su He followed Yang Chendong's instructions and picked up a big stick with the other hand. The general idea was that if anyone didn't want to leave, once the war started, not only his property could not be guaranteed, but also his life could be lost at any time. As ordinary people, no one was willing to live in the chaos of war. With this big stick raised high in the air, the few remaining voices of opposition quickly disappeared. Now, they only needed to wait for the first batch of 100,000 soldiers from the Japanese Empire and 200,000 people from other regions to arrive. Then, they would be able to gain a firm foothold in Turpan City and start conquering the entire Ili province. In front of Turpan City, Every day, countless people of various races could be seen passing by. On both sides of them, there would always be many soldiers protecting them. On the city gate tower, Marquis Wuxia Xianxia's brows were tightly knitted together. His heart was like a stormy sea rolling over and over. Once upon a time, Xianxia had looked down on Yang Qindong. It was just that he had a good background and had become the favorite of the emperor because he had given a potato to the emperor. He had also looked down on him because he was a business genius who knew how to make money. But no matter what his identity was, in the eyes of a general like Xianxia, he was just a weak young master who only knew how to talk. If he wanted to, he could trample such a person to death at any time. But suddenly, the Tumu Fortress incident had put Yang Qindong at the heart of the struggle. Then, there was the Battle of the Capital, and Yang Qindong had completely shone, becoming known as the war god. From then on, when Xianxia looked at Yang Qindong, there was not only jealousy and envy in his eyes, but also a trace of fear. Until now, Yang Qindong had become the Bugnom of Gojoseon. Although he had made progress, he was just a Marquis Wuxia. More importantly, he had already broken away from the shackles of the great Ming dynasty and become the king of a region. But now, he was just a commander-in-chief who had to Ming the emperor. The difference between the two was so great that although Xianxia was unwilling, there was nothing he could do. After all, the gap was so big that he had no way to surpass him. When the Battle of Origin City began, Xianxia thought that the opportunity had come, but he did not expect that he would fail at the last step. Now, he was forced to retreat to Toulouse City and watch Yang Qindong soar to the ninth heaven. The gap was getting bigger and bigger, and Xianxia's resentment in his heart was getting deeper and deeper. Now, he just wanted to have a chance to defeat the five-star army and prove that he was the best general in the great Ming dynasty. This pride made him like a ball of fire, which had been tormenting him for a period of time. If it were not for the shortage of food and fodder and the fact that the reinforcements had not yet arrived, he was afraid that he would have sent the troops after Yang Qindong left Toulouse City. This wait lasted for more than 2 months. Finally, news came from the imperial court that the new rations had been delivered and the new soldiers were being assembled. Just as everything was about to be ready, he saw the Northern Ming Army's Great Migration Project, or rather, the Great Movement. Every day, he did not know how many people and soldiers walked through the gate of Toulouse City. 1 day, 2 days. It had been like this every day for more than half a month, and there was still no sign of it stopping. Xianxia's fire was also constantly cooling down. Until now, cold sweat had begun to appear on his forehead. How many days has it been? Xianxia, who was standing on the city tower, asked with a trembling voice. Marquis, it's the 22nd day, General Zhou Qin, who was at the side, answered the question with a serious face. 22 days, 22 days. Xianxia's face turned uglier as he muttered the number silently. If there were only 10,000 people passing by each day, that would be more than 200,000. Not to mention, it was far from ending. He really didn't know where Yang Qindong had gotten so many civilians and soldiers, and what exactly were they preparing to do. The moment the five-star army bared their fangs, Xianxia suddenly had an idea of invincibility. He did not even dare to think about it. If the target of these soldiers and civilians was Toulouse City, would he still be able to defend it? Or rather, how long would he be able to defend it? Just as Xianxia's face was filled with thoughts, another group of cavalry and infantry walked through Toulouse City with a bright five-star flag. They seemed to be intentionally demonstrating their power. Coincidentally, Xianxia caught sight of them as they passed by the city walls. Is that ancient river? When Xianxia looked up, he saw a handsome general in armor walking less than a mile away from the city. Seeing that figure, Xianxia's squinted eyes suddenly widened. Yes. I think so. Zhou Qin recognized the person at a glance. It was General Ancient River, a former member of the 10,000 prefectures. As a former colleague, he couldn't be more familiar with him. But when he noticed Xianxia's tone, he quickly changed his words and spoke in an uncertain manner. He doesn't look like he is Ancient River. Didn't he already surrender to the five-star army? What is he doing here? When Xianxia saw that Gu He, who was riding a warhorse, was approaching the city gate tower. He involuntarily took half a step back even though he was standing on the city gate tower. He spoke with an anxious expression in his eyes. The person below the city was indeed Ancient River. But he was no longer Baiming's 10,000 prefectures general, but he was now the commander of the 5-star Army's new 1st Cavalry Division. The order was issued half a month ago by Yang Chendong himself. The new 5 armies were established. After the new 1st Army, the new 2nd Army, and the new Army, the new 5 armies were established. Moreover, it was the former commander of Baiming's 10,000 prefectures general, Shi Wanshan. When this news came out, many people's jaws dropped. It was also because of Shi Wanshan's sudden promotion that it attracted a lot of speculation. On the contrary, no one cared about why the new 4th Army didn't exist. They didn't know the plot in Yang Chendong's heart. He wouldn't allow anyone to steal the name of the new 4th Army, not even himself. The 5-star Army's expansion and the establishment of a new army were no longer a secret. For the new commander position, many people were secretly moving around. Some of them wanted to command more troops and earn more merits. Some of them were selfish and wanted to be in a high position with more power. They could always do more things that benefited themselves. Chapter 12:28. For this reason, Yu Mian, the vice commander of the army headquarters, Ling Song, and even the vice commander of the navy headquarters, Gao Xiong, had interceded through various channels. However, no one would have thought that this position would fall on the head of Shi Wanshan, who had just surrendered and had not made any contributions. When the new army commander, Tiger's Mane, represented Yang Chendong and announced this order in front of the officers of Shi City, even Shi Wanshan himself was stunned. Although he had been in charge of an army of more than 100,000 people when he was in Baiming, he could be considered to have the experience and qualifications to control an army. However, this was the 5-star Army. As a general who had just surrendered, it was better not to talk about his qualifications. Actually, it wasn't that Shi Wanshan hadn't heard about the establishment of the new 5 armies, but whether it was himself, his old subordinates Gu He and Ning Wenfeng, none of them thought about it. In their eyes, this was something that had nothing to do with them. With their current status, they would be thankful if they could be elected as one of the division commanders. It was not impossible for them to be appointed as a regiment commander. All of this was the analysis of Ning Wenfeng, who was known as the smartest of the 3. In his words, before surrendering, Shi Wanshan had said that he did not want to fight with Baiming. After all, he had come from there. Yang Chendong had also agreed to this matter in the telegram. Now that the new 5 armies were going to fight in Ili, it was very likely that they would be incorporated into it. If this was the case, whether it was as a division commander or a regiment commander, they would still have military power in their hands and could fully show their talent. They were afraid that they would be assigned a deputy position. If that was the case, there would be a main position above them, and it would be difficult to realize even if they had ideas. That would be the most uncomfortable thing. It was precisely because the hope was very low, or even that there was no hope. When the pie fell from the sky, Shi Wanshan's eyes were dazzled and his face was full of disbelief. As for Shi Wanshan's reaction, Tiger's Mane could empathize with him, but he didn't expect it either. However, since this was an order from the young master, he would definitely carry it out unconditionally. Therefore, he only glanced at the petrified Shi Wanshan and continued to read out the order. Order: Ancient River is the commander of the 1st Cavalry Division of the new 5 armies, Li Yu is the commander of the 2nd Cavalry Division, and Meng Chao is the commander of the 3rd Cavalry Division. Each division has 4 regiments, each regiment has 2,000 soldiers, and each regiment has 400 soldiers. Each regiment has 8,400 soldiers. At this point, Ancient River and the other 2 were also excited. They never thought that they would actually become a division commander. That meant that they could command close to 10,000 cavalrymen. However, no one noticed that one of the officers was clenching his fists, revealing the nervousness and unwillingness in his heart. This person was none other than Ning Wenfeng, the former head of Baiming's Wanquan Du Si. In the Wanquan Du Si, Shi Wanshan was in charge of the overall situation. His breadth of mind also allowed him to have talent in this area. In terms of martial prowess, Ancient River was naturally the most outstanding. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was a fierce general. However, when it came to the smartest person, the one who could understand the intentions of the higher-ups the most was definitely Ning Wenfeng. Most of the time, this Ning Wenfeng acted as Shi Wanshan's military advisor. This time's appointment was already beyond his expectations. Shi Wanshan was actually the commander of an army, and Ancient River was the commander of the 1st Cavalry Division. However, he wasn't included in the order. Could it be that Bugnam of Gojoseon wanted to separate the three of them and not let them work together? But if that was the case, why did he give out the positions of commander and commander? He couldn't figure it out. Ning Wenfeng shook his head and his face was a little pale. He was thinking that as the positions changed in the future, he was afraid that the gap between him and Shi Wanshan and Ancient River would become bigger and bigger. After a long time, the relationship between the brothers would not be the same as before. Just as Ning Wenfeng lowered his head and thought about this, Lieutenant General Tiger's man, who was standing on the stage, announced that after the battle of the first city, Yang Qindong was promoted to Lieutenant General. Not only that, but Leng Song and Gao Xiong were also promoted from Major General to Lieutenant General. Leng Feng's Army and Navy Division commanders were also promoted from Senior Colonel to Major General. The only difference was that the commander of the new 2nd Army, the commander of the new army, Su He, and the commander of the 1st Cavalry Division, Tianhu, were still Major General. Yang Qindong wanted to use this method to tell the world that the Tiger's man of the new army was different from ordinary commanders. He was the leader of all commanders. He opened his mouth and said, Ning Wenfeng is the commander of the infantry division of the new 5th Army, 4th Division, with a total of 15,000 soldiers. Wow! There was an uproar. A commander could command 15,000 soldiers. Except for the earliest Imo Bay Division, it seemed that not many people could enjoy this kind of treatment. But now, Ning Wenfeng had such achievements without doing anything. What kind of person was he? For a time, many people's eyes searched the crowd. At this time, Ning Wenfeng did not hear this at all. He was still entangled in Yang Qindong's purpose. He believed that his ability was not worse than anyone. It was just that his previous superior was Shi Wanshan, his own big brother, so he was embarrassed to take the credit. Since it was to measure talent, why didn't Bugnam of Gojoseon see his talent? Was it because he was too low-key? Ning Wenfeng, who was still thinking, did not know that Tiger's man had just announced his new appointment. He also did not know how many people were envious of him at this time. It was not until a burning gaze fell on him that he woke up from a dream. Then, Ancient River, who was beside him, gently nudged him. Hurry up and thank him with us. Before he could figure out what was going on, Ning Wenfeng was gently pulled out of the group by Ancient River. Then, they all gave a military salute that was not very standard. Ning Wenfeng, who had already walked out of the group, was still a little confused. He still did not understand why he stood out. Until Tiger's man on the stage said again, everyone is a talent personally appointed by Bugnam of Gojoseon. I hope you will not let down this expectation. Also, considering that the new 5 armies have just arrived and have not made any achievements, our ranks are lower. Among them, Commander Shi Wanshan will be a senior colonel, and the other 4 division commanders will be colonels. I hope that the next time we meet, you will be promoted to Major General and Senior Colonel like the other armies. After saying this, Hu Mang looked expectantly at the 5 people who had stepped forward. In fact, how could he not want to contribute his troops and give it his all? How could he not want to fight on the battlefield and establish meritorious service? But who asked him to be Yang Qindong's most trusted person? He wanted to stay in the first city and build it like an iron bucket. Okay, you can go and prepare. The soldiers can be selected from the Han army, the Mongol tribe, and the small Japanese army that has just arrived. The preparation time is half a month, and then we will send them to the inner area. After saying this, Tiger's man waved his hand. Immediately, the dust settled on the high-ranking officials of the new 5 armies. This decision was completely out of everyone's expectations. The sudden appearance did indeed catch some people off guard. However, this order was personally issued by Yang Chendong. It was said that he only reported it to the army headquarters before announcing it. Even Leng Song, the deputy commander, did not have any chance to intervene. This was enough to prove Yang Chendong's expectations for the new 5 armies. When the meeting was over, Tiger's man left first. The other officers took the opportunity to congratulate Shi Wanshan and the others. No matter what, it was not a bad thing to be on good terms with a commander. Ning Wenfeng, who was in the crowd, was still confused. Facing the congratulations of several officers who he did not even know the names of, he only smiled and cupped his hands. When the people around him gradually decreased, Ancient River gently pulled him, then said with a smile, "What's wrong, Commander Ning? Are you not happy to be in command of 15,000 infantrymen? Why don't we change it?" "What? Command 15,000 infantrymen? What's going on?" Ning Wenfeng was completely confused. His face was full of doubts and puzzlement. He didn't know that Ning Wenfeng had been distracted. He only thought that Ning Wenfeng was sick and wasn't feeling well. He reached out and touched Ning Wenfeng's forehead. Feeling that it wasn't hot, he said, "What's wrong? Didn't you hear when Commander Tiger announced the order just now? You are now the infantry division commander of the new 5 armies, 4th Division." "What? My division commander?" Ning Wenfeng exclaimed and pointed at himself. This scene was also seen by the other officers who were walking at the back, but they all smiled and shook their heads. They did not care. Obviously, if they were suddenly appointed as division commanders, their situation would not be much better. Seeing Ning Wenfeng making a fuss about nothing, Ancient River nodded. Yes, it was just announced in front of everyone. How can it be fake? I say, what are you thinking? Didn't you hear it just now? Faced with Gu He's question, Ning Wenfeng already didn't care at all. When he found out that he also held the position of a division commander, moreover, he was the infantry division commander of 15,000 men, at this moment, he only felt deep self-blame. What did he mean by Yang Chendong did not have the insight and could not see through people? In the end, he measured the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. After a while, Ning Wenfeng finally reacted. Then, he looked around and did not see Shi Wanshan's figure. He could not help but ask, "Where's Big Brother?" "Oh, Big Brother went to see the other 2 division commanders." You also know that a person who becomes a division commander will naturally be busier. Ancient River said with a matter-of-fact expression. This order shattered a lot of hope, but at the same time, it also gave a lot of people hope. In the past, it was always said that the 5-star army did not care about seniority and only looked at ability. Some people believed these words, but some people did not. However, with the matter of the new 5 armies, they had no choice but to believe it. Not long after, a new order was spread throughout the army. Commander Tong Long, who was also a fallen general of Liaodong, was promoted to division commander after making a great contribution. With the 2 things that happened before and after, at this moment, no one doubted the fairness of the ability. Chapter 12:29. And now, Ancient River appeared alone in front of Toulouse city to demonstrate his power. Previously, he had suffered a lot of grievances in the Baiming army, especially under Shi Heng's command. Now that he was a dragon in the sky, of course, he had to get rid of this mess and let the Baiming army know that he, Ancient River, was a talent that even Bugnam of Gojoseon had his eyes on. Of course, due to the distance, Ancient River did not know that Shi Heng was on the city tower at this time. Otherwise, he would have walked up and shouted a few words even if he was in danger of being shot by arrows. Therefore, he just wore a divisional level white cloak and walked in a big circle in front of the city. Then, he quickly rode his horse and rushed straight to his 1st Cavalry Division. White cloak? Divisional General? How long has it been since Ancient River left? He has already been entrusted with an important position. On the city tower, some young generals who had long understood the officer ranks of the 5-star army sighed. Among these sighs, there was a lot of jealousy, hatred, and of course, envy. Among them, there were many knowledgeable people who thought in their hearts. If they also went to the 5-star army, what would it be like now? Didn't they see that ancient river, who could not survive in Baiming, was now a divisional general? Of course, these envious people definitely did not include Shiheng. After he recognized ancient river, he snorted coldly and then asked General Zhou Qing, who was standing beside him, "Have you found out how many troops there are in the first city now?" "I don't have the detailed number, but I have the approximate number." When Zhou Qing answered this sentence, there was an obvious pause. When one looked carefully, there was a trace of panic on his face. Shiheng, who was filled with hatred in his heart, did not pay attention to this. He only wanted to know the situation of the 5-star army in the first city. In his opinion, although they did not succeed in besieging the first city a while ago, they still severely injured their opponents. Now, their strength should be weaker. "Well, about how many people are there?" About. Zhou Qing was a little hesitant and did not answer immediately. "What? Is it difficult to answer?" Shiheng finally noticed the change in Zhou Qing. This shout also attracted the attention of some people nearby. "Tell me, how many troops do you have? I want to know." Shiheng didn't care so much. He had long been used to everyone's attention. At this moment, there was a smile on his face. He wanted to take this opportunity to let everyone know about the situation in the beginning city. This way, he could increase his confidence. Zhou Qing also noticed the gazes of the people around him. At this moment, he didn't want to say anything. However, he did not expect Shiheng to be angry. There was a hint of anger in Shiheng's eyes. Hence, he decided not to think too much about it. After all, Zhou Qing was the one who forced him to say it. After that, Zhou Qing replied straightforwardly, reporting to Marquis. "According to our scouts' investigation, there are about 700,000 people from the 5-star army in Origin City." A mere 7, what? How many did you say?" At this moment, Shiheng finally came to his senses. He stared at Zhou Qing with his eyes wide open. 700,000 people, but not all of them are troops. There are also some civilians. Zhou Qing knew that this would be the result, but what could he do? "You forced me to say it." Hearing that there were quite a number of civilians, Shiheng suppressed the fear and anger in his heart and asked again, "How many troops do I mean? You don't have to use the number of civilians to deceive me." "Yes, there are about 300,000 soldiers." This time, Zhou Qing finally gave a definite answer. 300,000, this number made Shiheng's body tremble. He then forced himself to stand firm. There was a trace of blood in his eyes at this moment. He was speechless for a long time. He originally thought that after more than a year of siege in the beginning city, the strength there would be greatly reduced. Once Baiming's reinforcements and provisions appeared, it would be time for him to launch a large-scale counterattack. He never expected that the number of the enemy's troops would increase instead of decreasing. How did this trick work? How could he bear this result? Then, whether it was Zhou Qing or Shiheng, what was even more unexpected was that this number would continue to expand as time passed. It was not because of anything else, but because Shaowei province had a population of 8 million. Among them, more than 600,000 soldiers were captured by the 5-star army. Under the encouragement of the 5-star army policy, more young people from Shaowei province volunteered to join the army. According to Yang Qindong's plan, Shaowei province could recruit at least 400,000 soldiers. In total, there would be 1 million soldiers. At least half of them would be transferred to the grassland. One could imagine how huge this number was. In comparison, the 700,000 soldiers now were just the beginning. When Yang Qindong left Shaowei province, he had already made his next goal clear. That was to unify the grassland and then expand to the west and northeast respectively. For example, taking down Ili was just a part of the plan to go west. These were only the plans of the army. The navy would also go out of the South China Sea and attack the Indian Ocean. Then, they would attack Africa, the North and South continents, and North America. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that there was no obvious world structure to conquer the world. If he wanted to accomplish this feat, he naturally needed enough soldiers. Not only Shaowei province, but all the countries under Yang Xie's control began to mobilize. More and more young people from other races joined the ranks of the 5-star army. In the future, the number of soldiers in the 5-star army would only increase. Shiheng naturally did not know about all of this. Even if he was beaten to death, he would not have thought of all of this. This was the result of limited vision. In the eyes of people like him, the great Ming dynasty was already the sky. Whoever could unify the north and south of the great Ming dynasty would be a hero. As for the world, the great Ming dynasty and its surrounding countries should be the world. Shiheng walked down the city tower silently. At this moment, he felt a chill in his heart. At the same time, he decided to immediately report the situation to the acting emperor. Previously, he had boasted that as long as the provisions were in place and 200,000 new recruits were given, he would be able to take down the first city and regain control of the grassland. Now, it seemed that this was far from enough. At this moment, the logistics division in the first city was extremely busy. It was already time for the autumn harvest. The harvest of the provinces under Yang Xie's control this year was very good, especially after the centralized management of the grain fields. After the centralized planting, not only did it save more effort and people, but the amount of grain harvested was also 20% more than in previous years. This 20% should not be underestimated. It would increase the food for millions of people. This also indirectly made the army's work of collecting grain more smooth. Carriages and loads of provisions were piled up in the granary that had been prepared long ago in the first city. More new foreign troops from all over the world had also gathered here. As the head of the logistics division, the number of soldiers that Yang Xi needed to be allocated to him had reached a terrifying 300,000. Just this alone had made many officers envious. Even the commander of the new army, Tiger's Mane, had come to Yang Xi more than a few times. The general idea was to ask him to leave enough soldiers for himself. Of course, the quality must be guaranteed. That's right, the new army was going to be rebuilt into a new army group. The position of the group commander was naturally Tiger's Mane. According to the plan given by Yang Qindong, the 3 armies under his command were the 101st, 102nd, and 103rd armies, as well as a direct division of the army group. Each army group would be divided into 4 divisions, and each division had 4 regiments. A division would have 8,400 people, and an army group would have 33,600 people. In addition to the 3 armies, a direct division would have 10,000 people. In this way, the new army group would have 118,000 combat troops. If the logistics, medical personnel, and headquarters personnel were included, the total number would be more than 120,000. From one army group to an army group, there were many areas that needed to be reformed, and the number of officers that needed to be used was even more. It was not something that could be completed overnight. This time, Tiger's Mane had informed Yang Xi in advance so that he could leave behind more troops that were good at fighting. Even Tiger's Mane had made a move, let alone others. For a time, Yang Xi, who was only a division commander, became a hot steamed bun in everyone's eyes. Countless people came to ask for advice. However, with the example of Yang Lu, Yang Xi was able to stay true to his heart. He knew how to balance the 4 sides and supplement the strengths of the troops to complement each other. For example, in the past few days, after receiving the telegram from the 6th young master, Yang Xi immediately made arrangements. He immediately arranged for the 1st Army, 2nd Army, and the new 5 armies, a total of 3 armies of more than 100,000 people to move from the first city to the Yilili district. Under Yang Qindong's orders and Yang Xi's leadership, the original 1st Reserve Division was disbanded, and its division commander was allowed to be the commander of the 1st Army of the Outsiders. Under his command were the 301, 302, 303, and 304 divisions. The original 1st to 5th divisions were disbanded, and the original 1st Division commander Niu Duo was promoted to the commander of the 2nd Army. Under his command were the 305th, 306, 307th, and 308th divisions. Among them, the first army of the outsiders was the first to leave the first city, and the vanguard had already arrived at 8 Miles City. Then, it was the second army of the outsiders, followed by the new 5 armies, Ancient River, and the others that Shiheng had just seen. It could be seen that this time, Yang Chendong was determined to solve the problem in one battle. He would not allow some places to be reversed. This time, he would use the situation of the army to completely occupy and control that area. After sending out 3 armies, Yang Si still had to help form a new army. In addition, he had to start forming the 3rd army, the 4th army, and even more armies. It had to be said that the pressure was still very great. However, Yang Si, who had great power in his hands, was both painful and happy. The Turpan kingdom was occupied, and the allied forces of the 3 countries were defeated. When the news spread to the entire Ili district, the crowd was in an uproar. Many people were shouting in their hearts that the wolf was coming, but for a moment, they were somewhat helpless. In particular, the 3 kings of this area felt even more pressure. In addition to arranging their troops tightly and recruiting soldiers, they also sent people to Turpan City, wanting to solve the problem in this area by asking for peace. Chapter 1230. The only difference between the 3 kings was the leader of Wara, Yeshen. It could be said that he was the one who first came into contact with Yang Chendong. At that time, Yang Chendong was only the 6th brother of the Yang family and had not shown any military talent. In less than 10 years, Yang Chendong already had a territory that was countless times larger than his own. This made him feel ashamed, and at the same time, he knew that such an opponent would not back down, let alone talk about peace. Not putting his hopes on peace talks, Yeshen also did not contact the kings of the 3 kingdoms. In his view, since the 5-star army came and they could not talk about peace, then the 3 kingdoms could not back down and could only fight with the 5-star army. Whether or not he allied with them would not change this fact. Since that was the case, why would he need to ally with them? If he had the time, it would be better to look further and find a stronger ally to resist the 5-star army. The allies that Yeshen targeted were the descendants of the Mongol White Horde, Jiani Bek Khan and his brother Kelii. In 1428 AD, the White Horde was divided, and a bull seized the opportunity to seize the ruling power of the White Horde. He and his brother Kelii rebelled against a bull's rule. After they were defeated, they led their troops to seek refuge in the eastern Chagatai Khanate. They were not welcomed by the Khanate and were arranged to be nomads between the Chu and Taraz rivers. Kelii and his men supported Jiani Bek Khan and established the Kazakh Khanate. At this time, the 2 of them had just become Khans. The entire Kazakh Khanate was still in a period of instability, and there were still some opposing forces that appeared from time to time. In order to gain the trust of the 2 brothers, Yeshen sent one of his most trusted and one of the 4 remaining generals, Bo-Mur, to lead 50,000 elite Wala cavalry into the Kazakh Khanate and eliminate the opposing forces one by one. In more than a month, who knew how many people they had killed, gradually stabilizing Jiani Bek Khan's position and gaining the friendship of his brother Kelii. Seeing that it was about time, Bo-Mur brought up the matter of the 5-star army. He even mentioned that if the lips were gone, the teeth would feel cold. Just like the rise of the Mongol Empire in the past, the 5-star army will also slaughter their way over like our ancestors. At that time, we will all become prey and be at their mercy. This was what Bo-Mur had told Janibek Khan and his brother Kelii. After that, some information regarding the 5-star army was sent to the 2 of them. The strength and rise of the 5-star army quickly aroused the vigilance of the 2 brothers. It was not easy for them to obtain their current territory. Of course, they would not allow others to seize it. In order to stabilize their forces, they quickly decided to send out their troops. Kelii personally led 80,000 cavalrymen and followed Bo-Mur into the Ili region, directly converging with Yeshen's troops. Yang Chendong did not know about any of this. Yang Shi's intelligence network was indeed very powerful, but he didn't pay much attention to Kazakh, which was still very far away. In his eyes, attacking and occupying Kazakh wasn't the most important thing at the moment, so he just established a small intelligence group there. In addition, That region had always been in chaos, so the intelligence network could not be of any use. This allowed the 5-star army to have an additional 220,000 cavalrymen under their noses. Moreover, they were all elite cavalrymen that no one had discovered. Just like how Yang Chendong was mobilizing his troops, the enemy was also mobilizing their troops. Everyone was not idle and was racing against time to prepare. It was as if a storm was brewing. How could Yang Chendong, who was in the Turpan Palace, not know that the enemy was also preparing for war? In particular, the emissaries from the 3 countries had just been chased away by him. As for the idea of compensation from the 3 countries, he gave the most direct rejection. In his eyes, if they surrendered now, the army could live, the people could live, and even the king could live. He would give them all the best arrangements. However, it was impossible for him to withdraw his troops. The emissaries from the 3 countries left with regrets. Yang Chendong knew that there was no other way but to fight. It was only a fight. Who was he afraid of? Yang Chendong had absolute confidence in the 5-star army. Once the reinforcements arrived, he would have enough troops. That would be the time for him to launch an all-out attack. And just as Yang Chendong was thinking about the next military plan and which country to attack first, an urgent report suddenly appeared. The world's first cavalry division stationed at the Ala mountain pass sent an urgent message, and Ili suddenly sent 80,000 troops to surround them in this area. The 1st Cavalry Division could be said to be the most powerful army under Yang Chendong's command. In terms of cold weapons alone, even Leng Feng was no match for them. If even they sent an urgent message, one could imagine how bad the situation was. Young master, according to Commander Tianhu, they are not in any danger now, but there is no direction to break out of the encirclement. Once time passes, food will become the biggest problem. Please make a decision as soon as possible. Beta Persei, who was acting as an advisor, came to this conclusion after reading the telegram and the sand table placed in front of him. Yang Chendong supported this point of view. With the strength of the 1st Cavalry Division, it was very difficult for anyone to find trouble with them. Now that they were not breaking out of the encirclement, they were just looking for and waiting for an opportunity. Of course, it was not that the 1st Cavalry Division was not unprepared for this trip. On the contrary, they were fully prepared. Otherwise, they would not have appeared alone at the Ala mountain pass. If only 80,000 people wanted to find trouble with them, it would be difficult. However, if the enemy increased the number of troops, the situation would become serious. According to Tianhu, looking for an opportunity to find the weakness of the Ili cavalry division that was surrounding them. Waiting was to see if Yang Chendong had a better battle plan, such as cooperating with the enemy from the inside and outside. If the 5-star army could send a large number of cavalry to support the 1st Cavalry Division, it would not be difficult to severely damage the 80,000 Ili cavalry division. In that case, it would be another great victory. Surrounding them but not attacking? What are they trying to do? Although Yang Chendong agreed with Beta Persei's analysis, there were still some questions in his heart that he could not explain clearly. For example, did the Ili cavalry division not know that it would be easy to be attacked from both inside and outside if they only surrounded them without attacking? If they knew and still did this, then what were they relying on? Young master, could it be that they know the power of the 1st Cavalry Division and don't want to take the initiative to attack? They want to wait for us to break out of the encirclement. After all, we are not as familiar with the local terrain as they are. Beta Persei heard Yang Chendong's doubts and expressed his thoughts again. Yang Chendong nodded after listening. We can't rule out this possibility, but we also have to guard against them having any backup plans, such as surrounding them to attack the reinforcements. Beta Persei was startled when he heard this, then said, Young master, are you saying that they are using the 1st Cavalry Division as bait to lure us over and then block our reinforcements? Aren't they a little too bold? Is it? On the battlefield, it's either you die or I live. It's okay to be bold, sometimes you can only achieve great things by daring to think. Yang Chendong laughed, then shook his head indifferently and said, it doesn't matter if they are plotting something or not, since they have surrounded the 1st Cavalry Division, then we have to save them. In this case, get the Far Eastern Army's 1st Cavalry Division's division commander, Dai Qua. The 1st Cavalry Division was surrounded near the Ala Mountain Pass, which was indeed Ili Cavalry Division's doing. The reason why they did this was just as Yang Chendong thought. They wanted to attract more 5-star army to appear here and then defeat them one by one. Since there was no possibility for the two sides to solve the problem through peace talks, then the only thing left was to fight. Therefore, Ili Cavalry Division was prepared to make the first move. After contacting Yarkand and Turpan, they sent 80,000 cavalrymen to block the 1st Cavalry Division at the Ala Mountain Pass. With 80,000 cavalrymen against the 16,000 soldiers of the 1st Cavalry Division, it was exactly 5 times their strength. This was the reason why Ili Cavalry Division dared to do this. They had even more confidence because of the support of the Yarkiang Kingdom, the Turpan Kingdom, and the Vala tribe. Yes, after Yeshen received the support of 80,000 cavalrymen from the Kazakh Khanate, his military strength reached 220,000. This gave him the confidence to compete with Yang Chendong again. Not to mention, this time, they were in the dark, while the 5-star army was in the light, and with the full support of Ili Cavalry Division, he really couldn't think of any possibility of failure. The defeat of the allied army under the Turpan Kingdom taught the 3 kings a good lesson. After the incident, although they had criticized each other, the moment they sat down, the grim situation forced them to unite and fight against the 5-star army. After experiencing the trauma of the war, the foundation of the alliance became firmer. After seeing the power of the 5-star army, the 3 kingdoms started to recruit more soldiers. This wasn't just about the gains and losses of a city or a land. It involved the destruction of a country, so they couldn't help but muster up all their energy. Under the recruitment, the military strength of the 3 kingdoms was constantly increasing. Among them, Ili Cavalry Division recruited 100,000 soldiers, increasing their military strength to 270,000. Yarkand recruited 100,000 soldiers, increasing their military strength to 220,000. Turpan was even more impressive. They had always been hiding their soldiers among the people. This time, they recruited 150,000 soldiers, increasing their military strength to 250,000. If the 140,000 from Wara and the 80,000 from Kazakh were added, they would have another 220,000 soldiers. In total, they had nearly 1 million soldiers, and most of them were cavalrymen who were good at fighting. If it wasn't for this recruitment, the 5 powers wouldn't have known that they had such great power. When this number was placed in front of them, it gave them endless confidence. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to attack the strongest of the 5-star army, the 1st Cavalry Division. Chapter 1231. In the words of Prime Minister Apu of Ili, if they were to move, they would send out the strongest troops of the 5-star army. As long as the 1st Cavalry Division was destroyed, the morale of the 5-star army would be affected, and it would be time for them to counterattack. With such a consensus, Ili sent out 80,000 troops to surround the Ala Mountain Pass. This was because the other factions were slow in deploying their troops. Otherwise, it wouldn't be 80,000 troops, but 180,000 or 280,000. Surrounding the 1st Cavalry Division was only the first step of Apu's plan. While he urged the other factions to send more troops, he was also waiting for the 5-star army's response. If they wanted to break out of the encirclement, he would use his advantage in numbers to deal a heavy blow to them. On the other hand, if they decided to defend and wait for reinforcements to arrive, he would be able to use this time to dispatch more troops here and kill off the reinforcements one by one. Now that Apu had made the first move, it was time to see how the 5-star army would react. He wanted to see how the famous King Wunan of Daimyang would break out of this situation. Apu didn't have to wait for too long before the 5-star army's reinforcements appeared. It was the Liaodong Army's 1st Cavalry Division. A total of 8,400 people rode out of the city. This scene was quickly noticed by the scouts and was reported to Apu and the other factions. They really are preparing for a middle attack. But this Bugnam of Gojoseon is looking down on someone too much. He only sent out 10,000 cavalry. Does he really think he can turn the situation around? Men, inform King Hardenbarter and ask him to make a move. After receiving the report, Apu revealed a look of understanding. In his view, Yang Chendong's move wasn't very smart. Just as a huge battle was brewing in Ili and could erupt at any time, a group of unexpected guests came to Shajing City. The reason why it was called a group was because they didn't have many people, only 6 in total. Moreover, they were all very young. None of them were over 30 years old. Some of their faces were still brimming with youthfulness. Although they were young and few in number, no one could look down on them because they were all from Crimson City. They also had an identity that countless officials and military officers feared: disciplinary investigators. The Discipline Department was a new department established by the Crimson City City Lord, Yu Qian, after consulting with Yang Chendong. The scope of its management was very similar to the Commission for Discipline and Discipline in the modern era. At the same time, it also had the power of the Military Law Department. Its full name was the Disciplinary Investigation Department. Their duty was to investigate whether any official had colluded with the enemy, betrayed the country, or violated discipline. They were different from the Ministry of Supervision and the Ministry of Anti-Corruption. The corruption and abuse of power of the officials were not within their scope of investigation. What they valued was the integrity and loyalty of the officials. It could be said that this was a department to consolidate Yang Chendong's absolute dominance. This department had just been established not too long ago. In fact, they weren't even fully staffed yet. However, they had already appeared in Shajing City. From this, it could be seen that they were going to do a big case for everyone to see. At the same time, they were also taking the opportunity to raise the prestige of their disciplinary investigation department. Unfortunately, the new Second Army became the first target of their investigation. When he received the notice from the Crimson City Lord, the commander of the new Second Army let out a long sigh. He knew that the matter of him faking his surrender was not over. Now, what should have come had finally come. When he received the news that the Disciplinary Investigation Department was coming to Shajing City, the commander of the 1st Cavalry Division, Kong Ji, came to the headquarters of the new Second Army with a face full of anger. The moment he saw Shajing, he said with a look of indignation, "General, what is this Disciplinary Investigation Department doing? Even the Bugnam of Gojoseon didn't pursue our problem. What do they want to investigate? A straight foot is not afraid of a crooked shadow. If they want to investigate, then let them. We didn't do anything wrong. What are we afraid of?" Although Shajing was also a little angry, considering that Su Yuan was recommended by him and that he really did betray him, just based on this point, even if it was a big mistake that couldn't be remedied, it could only be investigated by others. Shajing's attitude didn't satisfy Kong Ji. He didn't come just to complain, but also to come up with an idea. "General, why don't we send a telegram to the king and tell him about this situation?" "No. The 6th young master is now fighting with Ili in the front. We can't be distracted." Shajing hurriedly waved his hand. He didn't want to trouble Yang Chendong because of his own matter. Although he was a little conflicted this time, why wouldn't he want to clear his name through this kind of investigation? Seeing that Shajing didn't agree, Kong Ji said indignantly, "But the king knows about our situation. He also said that we were wronged. We are people who have done meritorious deeds." "Okay, Mr. Kong, did you really do something wrong to the king and the 5-star army?" Shajing asked angrily when he saw that Kong Ji was still pestering him. "Of course not." Kong Ji patted his chest, looking like he didn't have to be afraid of ghosts screaming at his door if he didn't do anything wrong. "Since you didn't do anything wrong, why should we be afraid of investigating? Just let them do what they want. We should still do what we should do." Shajing waved his hand as he said this, but then his tone softened a lot. "Actually, this might not be a bad thing. After the investigation, there won't be any problems. Our new Second Army can be considered to have turned over a new leaf, and other people won't be able to pester us about this problem anymore." Kong Ji, who originally wanted to continue refuting, heard this last sentence. His eyes couldn't help but light up. "That's right. Anyway, we have never betrayed the king or the 5-star army. If they want to investigate, let them investigate. After this investigation, they must give us a conclusion. Seeing that Kang Ji had finally thought it through, Xiaojing also let out a sigh of relief. What he was most worried about was that the officers under him would be conflicted, which would affect their work. One had to know that the provisions, soldiers, and civilians that were heading to the Ili area had to pass through Xiaojing City. Xiaojing City had to receive a lot of people every day, so it was absolutely impossible to go on a business trip. Don't worry. Castellan Yu Qian has already given us an accurate answer. After this investigation, there will be a conclusion. With this conclusion, no one will talk about the new Second Army's past. Xiaojing calmed Kang Ji's anger, but he didn't know that some people were angry because of this. At this moment, in front of Xiaojing City, 6 young people were standing there. Their faces were very ugly. The leader was wearing a long robe. At this moment, he was frowning and covering his nose. From time to time, there would be civilians and soldiers entering the city. When they walked past him, they would bring different smells, which seemed to make him very annoyed. Speaking of which, he had always lived in Qiqian City. The hygiene there was excellent, and the air was good. When had he ever seen such a scene? The civilians and soldiers were rushing through the night without the conditions to take a bath, so it was reasonable that there were all kinds of smells on their bodies. This made Muda, the leader of the disciplinary investigation department, have an ugly expression. What made him even uglier was that he had already arrived at the entrance of Xiaojing City, but there was still no crowd to welcome him. Although Yang Chendong advocated that Yang Xie didn't like to do such things, but when he really came, there wasn't even a single person to welcome him. This made Muda angry. From his point of view, this was the new Second Army not putting him and the disciplinary investigation department in their eyes. You better not have any problems. Otherwise, I will make an example out of you. After a flash of anger passed through Muda's heart, he covered his nose again. He raised his head and waved his hand as he led his 5 team members into Xiaojing City. In the new Second Army's headquarters, Xiaojing had just met with a passing 5-star army commander. They discussed how long they would stay here and how much food they would bring with them. After that, a soldier came to report that Muda, who claimed to be from Qiqian City, had arrived at the headquarters and wanted to meet with him. From Qiqian City, and he's a leader? After Xiaojing heard this, he quickly understood that this must be the group that was investigating him. He immediately said, "Let's go, lead the way." In the reception room of the military headquarters, Muda and his 6 team members had already found a place to sit down. After coming here, they could finally drink tea without having to smell the unpleasant smell. The 6 of them looked much better. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of hurried footsteps came from outside the hall. Then, Shibi, who was wearing a major general's uniform, walked into everyone's line of sight. The moment they saw the major general, the young men in the hall wanted to stand up. However, when their gazes landed on their leader, Muda, they realized that he did not do anything. They could not help but put their raised butts back down. Compared to a major general, they valued the identity of their team leader more. After all, that was the person who could decide their future. Of course, Muda also saw the departure, but because he was angry that the other party did not welcome him, he wanted to show him who was the boss, so he sat down and did not move. She slowly stood up when she was about 5 steps away from him. After he entered the hall, no one paid any attention to him. His heart skipped a beat. He had a feeling that the investigation team did not come with good intentions. Because Shibi had once betrayed the 5-star army, even if it was forced by circumstances, even if it was just an act, in many people's eyes, it was a fact, a part of history. Therefore, he felt guilty and did not reject the investigation team. However, the personal guard beside him didn't think so. Seeing that the 6 guests were still so arrogant even when the military commander was here, he couldn't help but be furious. He shouted, "The military commander is here. Don't you know how to stand up and welcome him?" Muda, who had already raised half of his buttocks, heard this and sat back down. He then said in an annoyed tone, "Oh, I didn't know that commander she was so arrogant. I say, Commander, you won't punish us for not welcoming you, right? Chapter 1232. Step down. Shibi had a premonition that something was wrong when the guards shouted those words. Seeing that Muda was indeed angry, he hurriedly scolded the guard. Then, he squeezed out a smile and took the initiative to bow and extend his right hand to Muda. You must be team leader Muda. As the saying goes, a slap doesn't hit a smiling face. The other party was also a major general, so Muda couldn't go too far. He stood up a little bashfully and shook Shibi's hand. I am Muda, the team leader in charge of this investigation. And, seeing that Commander Shibi is so travel-worn, you must be very busy. At this moment, Shibi didn't look travel-worn at all. He was wearing a brand new Major General's uniform and was abnormally clean. This was what he had just changed into. In his mind, since it was someone from Qi Xian, then it was someone from the headquarters. He should treat them well. That was why he changed into a clean set of clothes. He didn't expect that this would cause Muda to misunderstand. However, Shibi didn't know this. He thought that Muda was being polite, so he told the truth. It's normal for me to be busy. Just now, I met with a new logistics officer of the 5th Army to discuss the matter of food. That's why I came late. Shibi was naturally telling the truth. However, in Muda's ears, it wasn't the case. A major general actually lowered himself to meet with a regimental officer. Furthermore, he was in charge of logistics. Who would believe this? Muda's first impression was that Shibi was being perfunctory. Oh, so you're saying that Commander Shi is really busy. A regimental officer can waste so much of your time. It seems that there will be battalion and company officers next. Does that mean that in the future, even a small soldier will need you to personally meet him? Muda's words finally made Shibi feel that something was wrong. He originally thought that Muda was being polite. Now, it seemed that Muda was simply looking for trouble. No matter what, Shibi was still a major general. He was used to being dignified. The reason he lowered his head wasn't because of Muda, but because of City Lord Yu Qian. Now that Muda didn't believe him, why should he be polite? He immediately said with a straight face, Team Leader Muda, I don't know what you mean by this. Could it be that the commander couldn't meet the regiment commander? We are all soldiers of the 5-star army, and we are all ordinary members. In the words of the 6th young master, there is no distinction between high and low. The sudden counterattack stunned Muda. The 6th young master's words made Muda's expression turn ugly. There were not many people who could call Yang Qindong the 6th young master. Only some old Yang Xia people and some important people could call him that. For example, Muda could only be called Bugnam of Gojoseon. This was the difference between them. While Muda was still in a daze, the second wave of attacks arrived. Leader Muda, what you said just now is just a small soldier. I don't agree with that either. The reason why the 5-star army was invincible was because of the joint efforts of countless ordinary soldiers. There are no small characters among them, so please be careful with your words. It was a slap to the face. Initially, he wanted to show off his strength to the other party, but now, he was the one being taught a lesson. However, the parting words were extremely dignified and reasonable. Even if Muda wanted to refute, he couldn't. For a moment, he could only stand there with his face alternating between red and white. He knew that he would offend team leader Muda, but he was not afraid. He was confident that he would not be investigated. Of course, he wouldn't stick his warm face to some cold butt. He immediately turned around and left with the excuse that he was busy with work. She had only appeared for a short while before leaving. He did not even recognize the other members of the task force and did not even greet them. This angered everyone. Among them, Muda's assistant, Chang Wu, said angrily, "Humph. What was there to be proud of? Wasn't he just relying on his status as a commander? Even if you anger us, we'll still investigate you." Yes, investigate him properly. Didn't a dignified commander also do something like defecting to the enemy? At this moment, the other team members also shouted in unison. They had all grown up in Crimson City and had witnessed the process of Yang faction growing from nothing to power. Because of this, they shared the glory and felt that Crimson City being where it was today was inseparable from their hard work. It could be said that these people had already tied the glory of Qiqian City to themselves. This was also the result of Yang Qindong and Yu Qian's discussion. It was to let everyone have a sense of ownership. Only then could they better protect and develop this place. Under this kind of education, it was extremely successful. Every time the news of the 5-star Army's victory spread, the citizens of the city would cheer. However, if there was victory, there would be defeat. Just like when the new Second Army surrendered to Baiming, when this matter spread to Qiqian City, who knew how many people scolded Shibei for being an ingrate, and these few were among them. With preconceived notions, it would be strange if they had a good impression of Shibei. Even though the new Second Army returned to Yang Xie's embrace, in many people's eyes, it was just because they couldn't bear to part with him. Who asked Yang Xie to make the 5-star Army so powerful? What else could they do if they didn't surrender? This was also the reason why the investigation team came to the new Second Army. Some of them suspected that Shibei was a disloyal person. In addition, the investigation team had just been established and they needed to establish their authority. What could be more influential than investigating a commander? Therefore, Muda came here with the intention of finding problems and finding fault with them. This kind of nitpicking goal was not to mention that the new Second Army had already gone through a period of turmoil. Even if it didn't, there would still be turmoil. That was the truth. After meeting with Shibei on bad terms, Muda and the others began to get busy. They used their authority to find many of the new Second Army's low-ranking officers to have a heart-to-heart talk. Although it was called a heart-to-heart talk, it was actually coercion and enticement. They took the initiative to guide the results they wanted. The commander of the 1st Cavalry Division, Kong Ji, quickly found out about this matter. He originally wanted to go and tell Shiba about it, but after thinking about how his previous visit to Shiba was fruitless, he actually went straight to the 6th base in a fit of anger. He directly said that they were here to cause trouble, and had a huge argument with Captain Muda. Muda was put on the spot by a division commander. In a fit of anger, he found the members of the public security in Shaojing City. They had already received orders from Shaojing City to cooperate with the investigation team. Immediately, a team of 20 people walked out and went to the 1st Cavalry Division's headquarters to arrest Division Commander Kong Ji. It was naturally impossible for 20 members of the public security to do as they pleased in the headquarters. As soon as they entered the headquarters, they were surrounded by the guards. All the weapons in their hands were also taken away, waiting for Division Commander Kong Ji to deal with them. To everyone's surprise, Kong Ji actually let these people go and returned their weapons. Not only that, he also took the initiative to walk out of the headquarters with the 20 members of the public security. The moment he walked out of the door, he looked back at the door with a determined look in his eyes. Kong Ji was taken away in front of many officers in the headquarters. This news immediately reached Shibei's ears. He immediately rode to the investigation team's office. Unfortunately, he didn't even see Muda. Only his assistant, Chang Wu, stopped him. Commander Shi, Kong Ji has a big problem. He is currently under investigation. Before the problem is solved, no one is allowed to see him. Please go back. After saying this, Chang Wu immediately asked the members of the public security team to close the door and shut Shibei out. After being given the cold shoulder, Li Xian's face turned extremely ugly. He swayed on the horse and fainted. Fortunately, the bodyguard beside him reacted quickly and caught him. However, because of this, Li Xian still fell ill. An army's work schedule was instantly affected when both the commander and the 1st Division commander couldn't work at the same time. The most direct result was that many soldiers, civilians, and food supplies passing through Shaojing City to Ili Lianli had to stop because of this. The longer they stopped, the more complicated the problem would become and harder to solve. The other officers of the new Second Army saw that the situation was getting out of hand and quickly notified the new First Army. In a sense, everyone was a military unit, but the new Second Army was under the management of the new First Army. In the headquarters of the new First Army, Tiger's Mane's face darkened when he heard about the new Second Army situation. What the hell? Don't they know what time it is? The war in Ili Lienli is at a critical time. Why do they need an investigation team? That's right, Tiger's Mane. I think these people are just here to cause trouble. The Logistics Division Commander, Yang Si, also nodded and said in agreement. He was a practical person and admired people who did things. He hated it when people stabbed people in the back. No, Shajing City is a transit battle zone. We can't let it fall into chaos. We have to send someone there to solve the problem there. Tiger's Mane shook his head and said as if he had made up his mind. Tiger's Mane, I'll go. Yang Si thought about it and took the initiative to volunteer. Most people wouldn't give face to people from Qiqian City. In the entire First City, only 3 people could give Qiqian Fu pressure. They were Tiger's Mane, Yu Mian, and Yang Si. Needless to say, Tiger's Mane was the commander of the new First Army and would soon be the commander of the new First Army. He was also Yang Chendong's study companion since he was young. No matter which identity he used, it was enough to give the people in the Qiqian City headquarters pressure. However, it was too flattering for him to meet an investigation team as Tiger's Mane. So it was not suitable. Yu Mian was Yu Qian's eldest son and was from Qiqian City. Of course, there was no problem. It was just that the literati's method of doing things was not decisive enough. What Shajing City needed now was a thunderous method to solve everything. It was not suitable for him to go. Chapter 1233. In the end, only Yang Si was left. Although he was only a logistics division commander, his authority in the rear was greater than that of any army. In addition, he was a servant of the Yang family manor and was one of Yang Chendong's most trusted people. He was the most suitable person to go. Okay, you go. Investigate the matter as thoroughly as possible. As long as you don't violate discipline, you can be more decisive. Tiger's Mane hesitated for a moment before agreeing to Yang Si's request. Tiger's Mane, don't worry. I know what to do. Yang Si nodded and left the new army headquarters. He returned to the logistics division and found a few deputies to arrange a task for him. Then, he set off with a small team of 50 soldiers. Shajing City. The bustling city was about to become chaotic. Facts proved that the army could not do without a leader. Without the unified management of the army commander, the other 3 division commanders found it difficult to control the situation no matter how hard they tried. Not to mention, the 3 division commanders were also angry. In their view, the investigation team was clearly looking for trouble. With such a mentality, it would be strange if they could do a good job. For days later, when Yang Si arrived at Shajing City, he saw carriages loaded with provisions stopped in the middle of the street, unable to advance or retreat. With so many provisions placed there, if there was chaos, it would be a big problem. Yang Si's eyes flashed with anger. He asked the staff of the new Second Army who came to greet him. After learning the location of the investigation team, he spurred his horse and rushed straight there. The investigation team chose to work in a courtyard in the south of the city. The terrain was remote and there were few people walking around. It was a good place for business. When Yang Si, who was dressed casually, came from afar, he saw 6 members of the Public Security Bureau standing guard at the entrance of the courtyard. Yang Si's appearance also alarmed the 6 members of the Public Security Bureau. When they saw a group of cavalry coming from afar with a murderous aura, one of them turned around and went into the courtyard to report. The other 5 assumed a defensive posture. Who? Yang Si stopped the horse and jumped down from the gate of the courtyard. He didn't even look at the 5 police officers as he strode into the courtyard. Then, 5 figures blocked his path. Who are you? This is a restricted area. No one is allowed to enter without permission. Naturally, the members of Shajing City's Public Security Bureau would not recognize the high and mighty Yang Si. However, their obstruction had infuriated Yang Si. It was said that one's subtlety gradually deepened. He could imagine the arrogance and despotism of the investigation team just by looking at these police officers. He immediately snorted coldly. "Humph, get out of my way, or else." "What else?" Yang Si didn't say, but his bodyguards were already waving the sabers in their hands, looking like they were about to attack. Controlling hundreds of thousands of warriors from various countries and races waiting to be assigned, there were many people to choose from. Yang Si's personal guards were not ordinary people. Just the aura they exuded made the faces of the 5 members of the Public Security Bureau change drastically. Although the other party didn't make a move, they had a feeling that if these people were to make a move, they wouldn't have any power to resist. "Get out of my way." Yang Si didn't give the order to make a move. After all, they were Yang Si's people. After saying this, Yang Si strode into the courtyard. He pushed with both hands and the door opened. What he saw was Jianghu and 20 members of the Public Security Bureau blocking his way. When he heard that someone was about to break into the courtyard, Jianghu immediately volunteered to step forward. He was nervous and excited at the same time. He was nervous about who the intruder was and whether or not he would really go crazy and attack them. He was excited because if someone really did that, it would be a provocation to the entire disciplinary investigation department. In that case, they could take the opportunity to reorganize and no one would be able to say anything. With this thought in mind, Jianghu asked preemptively when he saw the door being pushed open and a man in a long robe walked out. "Who are you? How dare you break into the disciplinary investigation department's restricted area? Put down your weapons and surrender immediately, and you may receive lenient treatment when you are sentenced." His loud shout was quite imposing and achieved Sir's intention of seizing people. If it was a coward, they might have been scared silly by this shout. What kind of person was Yang Si? He only had one master, and that was Yang Chendong. The people he usually associated with were at the level of military advisors. Why would he care about a small fry like Jianghu? He glanced at Jianghu casually and asked, "You're the leader of the disciplinary investigation department?" "I'm not." Jianghu answered instinctively, but he seemed to remember something and explained, "I'm." When he heard that the other party was not the leader of the disciplinary investigation department, Yang Si immediately lost interest in the conversation and waved his hand. "Where is your leader? Take me to him." "And who the hell are you?" "Our leader is not someone you can meet just because you want to." Jianghu was a little annoyed that he had been interrupted, so his tone became a little more serious as he spoke. As he spoke, he looked at Yang Si in a provocative manner. "Ha." This time, Yang Si laughed. It was just a meeting with a team leader. He really didn't take it seriously. As long as he was willing, he could even meet the head of the disciplinary investigation department, let alone the leader. His laugh was because he was amused by Jianghu's words. However, this laugh seemed a little guilty in Jianghu's eyes. He thought that the other party was afraid and was trying to cover it up with laughter. "Humph. You don't have to pretend this time. I'm afraid you'll have to talk to me humbly next." While Jianghu was still fantasizing in his heart, Yang Si spoke again. However, he had already put away his smile and his expression became very serious. He said word by word, "Who do you think you are? Get lost." The friendly gesture that he was waiting for did not appear. Instead, he was shouted angrily. This made Jianghu's expression change drastically. He involuntarily stretched out his right index finger and was about to curse. Before he could speak or do anything, the bodyguards brought by Yang Si moved again. One of them rushed forward and dislocated Jianghu's chin. Then, he swallowed the words that he wanted to say. Then, one of them flashed an identity token in front of the more than 20 members of the Public Security Bureau who were making a move. "We're from the logistics division of the beginning city. We need to do something here. Get out of the way." The moment the name of the logistics division of the beginning city was revealed, the expressions of the more than 20 members of the Public Security Bureau changed drastically. Then, they obediently leaned to the side. Although the military and the Public Security Bureau did not have much interaction, and even a major general did not have any privileges in front of ordinary members of the Public Security Bureau. However, this did not mean that Yang Si did not have any. He was Yang Chendong's servant. At the same time, his logistics division was also responsible for sending backup forces to the local Public Security Bureau. For example, some young and strong men who were not selected by other armies were likely to turn around and enter the local Public Security Bureau. Some old veterans who were injured but not very seriously would also be sent to the Public Security Bureau. These things were all decided by the logistics division. Therefore, Yang Si could be said to be normal for them. When they thought about how even their branch chief had to smile when he saw the logistics division, they were just ordinary members. What was the big deal? They could not afford to offend such a person. Immediately, they hurriedly retreated to the side, looking as obedient as they could be. Yang Si did not look at them again. This time, he came to look for the investigation team leader. As for other things, he did not care about them. He still strode in and soon arrived at the inner courtyard. He saw an officer in a captain's uniform being interrogated in a relatively spacious hall. Perhaps because they were too focused on the interrogation, those people actually didn't notice Yang Si's arrival. Yang Si also wanted to see how the investigation team worked. He immediately waved his hand and asked the soldiers to be quiet. He stood there and watched from a distance. "Speak, Company Commander Li." "It's still the same question. When you surrendered to the Baiming army, you had no choice. But when you turned around and surrendered to the 5-star army, was it also because you had no choice?" The person who was interrogating was the team leader, Muda. At this time, he was looking at the company commander named Li Yun with a serious face. To be able to become a company commander, one must have experienced life and death situations. They were all on the front lines. People like this, there were tall, short, fat, thin, and had different education levels. They might even be different races. However, they all had one thing in common, which was that they were not afraid of death. Facing the serious Muda, Li Yun's face did not have any seriousness. Instead, he laughed and said, "I say, Team Leader Li, you have asked the same question many times. I have also answered many times." At that time, Shaojing City and Jingzhou City were heavily surrounded by the Baiming army. There were no reinforcements on the outside and no food on the inside. We had no choice but to feign civility and surrender to the Baiming army. However, our hearts have always been with the 5-star army. It is best described as being in one's camp while our hearts are in another's camp. As for us returning to the 5-star army, everyone was willing. It was also the result of everyone's wishes. What is there to be helpless about? Shut up. Hearing Li Yun still say the same thing, Muda angrily said, "Company Commander Li, please face my question." "I am not answering." Li Yun's expression became more serious as expected. However, the words he said made Muda and the others quite angry. "But what I said is the truth. I can't go against my conscience and say what you want." "What do you mean by what we want?" "We are investigating the truth." Muda, who was angered by Li Yun's behavior, snorted coldly and said, "Fine, since you said that you have always been loyal to the 5-star army, then let me ask you, how did Captain Wuxia die? Was it your commander who killed him personally?" Chapter 1234. When it came to Wu Xiaoyi's matter, Muda obviously had some confidence. This was the truth. At that time, this guard captain rushed into the Baiming army's camp and killed a few Baiming army soldiers who bullied the civilians. How happy was that? However, after he came back, he was not treated as a hero. Instead, he was killed by Shibei. Based on this, he had reason to suspect that Shibei really wanted to join the Baiming army at that time. This matter was a clear proof. He wanted to please the Baiming army. When it came to this matter, Commander Li Yun's expression became much more respectful. "That's right. Guard Captain Wu was killed by our military leader. Oh, quickly tell me, quickly record it. Seeing that Li Yun was finally going to fall into the trap, Muda's expression became a little excited. The first sentence was to encourage Li Yun, and the second sentence was to the team member who was responsible for recording beside him. Ignoring Muda's excitement, Li Yun seemed to have fallen into some kind of memory. With a solemn expression, he said, "At that time, when Guard Captain Wu was killed, our brothers didn't understand. Some of them even wanted to leave the barracks. However, because the Baiming army guarded them tightly, and we didn't have a way to return to the Sure city at that time, we had to suppress this thought. However, it wasn't until later when we rebelled against the Baiming army and the military leader personally held a memorial service for Guard Captain Wu that everyone realized that it was just a show. If we didn't do this, the Baiming army wouldn't have believed us, and we wouldn't have been able to regain control of Shajing and Jingzhou city so smoothly." After saying this truthfully, Li Yun looked at Muda with a more relaxed expression. That's what happened. It turned out that we had indeed wronged the military leader. For this matter, many regimental and battalion-level officers took the initiative to apologize to the military leader. I also wanted to go, but because my rank was too low, I didn't go. Hearing that Li Yun wanted to apologize to Shi Bei for this matter, Muda was completely angry. No, it's not like this. The so-called memorial service is just an act of mending the pen after the sheep are lost. You were all deceived by him. They only did this because they had no other choice. She is a complete opportunist. No. Li Yun got angry when he heard someone slandering his commander. He shouted back, "This matter was discussed between the commander and division commander Kong Ji. Even the deceased Captain Wu agreed to it. This matter was explained later." No. Muda shook his head crazily. How can a person be willing to die for a plan? That's just what they said. It's basically Shi Bei and Kong Ji's false confessions. That's the truth. You've all been deceived. With Wood's way of thinking, he could not accept the fact that someone had died in order to complete a quest. Moreover, the completion rate of this quest was so low. Therefore, he would never believe that such a thing would happen. From this, he concluded that all of this was a conspiracy that Shi Bei and Kong Ji had discussed. Because of this, he had detained Kong Ji in order to cause chaos in Shi Bei's army. Now, Shi Bei was indeed staying at home. Although it was said that he was recuperating, according to his analysis, this was clearly a manifestation of fear. Muda was still shouting and yelling. He even wanted to force Li Yun to admit everything. As a bystander, Yang Si couldn't stand it anymore. Some people didn't understand Wu Xiaoyi's actions. However, as someone who was also from the military, he believed that when things were urgent, someone would make such a sacrifice. On the battlefield, there were many people who sacrificed themselves to save their comrades. Yang Si didn't want to see Muda oppressing Li Yun like this. He coughed lightly and walked out. This sound also attracted everyone's attention. When Muda realized that there were still bystanders in the courtyard, his expression darkened. He said with obvious displeasure, "Who are you? Who allowed you to be here? Where's Chang Wu? Where are the public security team members who are maintaining order? There's no need to yell. They're all outside. They've been restrained by my men," Yang Si said as he strode forward. When he heard that Yang Si had restrained Chang Wu and the others, Muda's face flashed with anger. "Who are you? Who gave you the authority to do this? Who gave you the authority to coerce and extort confessions? Is this how the people in the disciplinary investigation department work? Humph. I'm going to ask Chief Guan Wenjing about this. How does he teach his subordinates?" Seeing that Muda was still putting on airs in front of him, Yang Si was also angry. This person was clearly a mad dog who would bite anyone he caught. He wouldn't let such a person get away with it. When Muda saw that someone was quarreling with him, he wanted to refute in a fit of anger. However, when he heard the other party mention the minister's name, he was stunned. He had a feeling that the person who came this time was of high status. Muda shut his mouth, and Yang Si ignored him. Instead, he strode into the interrogation room. First, he looked at the sign with the word interrogation hanging by the door. His right hand suddenly moved, and he pulled out his saber and slashed at it. Ding dong. The wooden sign with the word interrogation fell. Yang Xi's voice rang out. Who gave you the authority to interrogate our outstanding officers without any evidence? Let me tell you, this is only an interrogation and not an interrogation. You have to remember your authority. Under such a domineering saber, the room was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. A few members of the disciplinary investigation department stared at Yang Xi with wide eyes. Obviously, they didn't expect someone to be so bold as to smash the sign in their office. Just when the room was completely silent, the company commander named Li Yun stood up and saluted. He asked tentatively, You are Division Commander Yang? Oh, you know me? Yang Xi had a good impression of this neither servile nor overbearing Li Yun. He smiled and replied. It's really Division Commander Yang. I'm Li Yun, the company commander of the 2nd Battalion of the 3rd Regiment of the 2nd Cavalry Division. I've seen Division Commander Yang once from afar. As he spoke, Li Yun scratched his head embarrassedly. He probably also knew that his status was too far away from Yang Xi's. Oh, you're quite considerate. Your performance just now was not bad. You didn't embarrass the military. Yang Xi looked at Li Yun and seemed to be more and more satisfied. While the two of them were still talking, Muda's spirits rose again. He originally thought that the person who came was a big shot since he even knew the chief's name. Now that he heard Li Yun call him division commander, he was relieved. He strode forward and looked at Yang Xi with an arrogant attitude and said, So it's Division Commander Yang. Hee, how bold of you. Not only did you dare to order us around, you even dared to destroy our office supplies. This time, you're in big trouble. Let me tell you, even if I mention our chief's name, no one can protect you. Yang Xi was still puzzled. How did the other party have the guts to appear in front of him? When he heard the other party call him division commander, he came to his senses and laughed. He pointed at Muda and said, Oh, I'm a division commander. Can't I care about these things? Humph. You can't even protect yourself. What can you care about? Muda looked at Yang Xi with disdain. Obviously, he had already sentenced the other party to death in his heart. This time, he came under the authority of the Disciplinary Investigation Department. He was personally reported to Bugnam of Gojoseon by the City Lord of Crimson City. With such confidence, he wasn't afraid of a small division commander. One must know that in the room over there was still a division commander with outstanding military achievements. Snobbish. In the past, Yang Xi didn't have a deep understanding of this saying. Now, he finally understood. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. Muda, who was beside him, also laughed out loud. Obviously, he thought that Yang Xi's identity had been exposed by him, so he didn't know what to do. He had already decided that he would take Yang Xi down and report to the headquarters. He would convict him of contempt and provocation of the Disciplinary Investigation Department. Before taking down a division commander, taking care of a division commander was a good thing. After laughing for a while, Yang Xi suddenly stopped. He looked at Muda fiercely. He really didn't know why the Disciplinary Investigation Department would send such a person to do this. There was a saying that one could achieve anything with effort. With such a person in the Disciplinary Investigation Department, Yang Xi was really afraid that he would get into big trouble. Alright, since you're not a good person, I'll take you down first. I want to see if you're clean or not. Yang Xi was completely angered by Muda. He had already made up his mind. As for whether this would offend some people, he didn't care. At most, he would ask for forgiveness from the young master. However, before Yang Xi could do anything, Muda spoke first. He said to the team members behind him, everyone saw it. This person dared to openly provoke and destroy public property of the Disciplinary Investigation Department. He's suspected of sabotaging our investigation. Shouldn't we arrest him and punish him? Yes. The members of the investigation team naturally followed Muda's lead. After all, Yang Xi's actions just now were indeed a provocative act. Good. After receiving the support of his companions, Muda shouted, "Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and arrest him." Muda actually wanted to arrest him. Yang Xi was really stunned by this order. He didn't know what gave the other party the confidence to arrest a divisional cadre without any evidence. Could this be the prestige of the headquarters? Originally, he couldn't find a good reason. Now that Muda wanted to arrest him, it didn't matter if he took action. Even if the young master found out about this, he wasn't afraid anymore. So at this moment, instead of being angry, he laughed. He casually waved his hand and gestured to the soldiers behind him to arrest Muda. Chapter 1235. These bodyguards might not be able to out-talk the people from the investigation team, but if they were to fight, who would be their match? At that moment, the bodyguards swarmed forward, and the 5 members of the investigation team, including Mold, were crudely pressed to the ground. "What are you doing? Are you trying to rebel?" Muda was furious when he saw that his division commander had actually made the first move. "Hee, it's not up to you to decide whether we're rebelling or not. I see that you don't have any other abilities, but you're quite good at making accusations. Men, lock them up and interrogate them properly. I want to see how clean they are." Yang Xi was also furious. This time, he wanted to investigate them properly. Since he had already made a move, he wanted to see things through to the end. He had a feeling that there must be something behind Muda, who was easily bullied and feared the strong. Yang Xi immediately took action and captured him. However, after considering some factors, he did not release Division Commander Kong Ji. Even Company Commander Li Yun was asked to stay in the courtyard and not go out. He wanted to keep the news a secret to avoid alerting the enemy. After leaving behind 30 bodyguards to interrogate Muda and the others, Yang Xi left the courtyard and brought the remaining 20 bodyguards to the Second Army's headquarters. The Second Army's headquarters was no longer as lively as it used to be. Even if some of the officers were still working, it was obvious that they were not in a good mood. They all looked absent-minded. It made sense. They were busy at the front, but someone was stabbing them in the back. If it were anyone else, they would not be in the mood to work. When Yang Xi appeared in the Second Army's headquarters, many people looked at him with hope. Some even wanted to report some of the investigation team's misdeeds. However, when they saw that Yang Xi was very anxious and only asked where the commander was, they could only suppress the anger in their hearts and did not stop him. In the backyard of the headquarters, Yang Xi saw Muda be lying on the bed and resting. She had not seen him for a while, and he seemed to have aged quite a bit. His originally black hair had also gained a bit of white. As soon as Yang Xi entered the room and saw who it was, he hurriedly got up. Yang Xi hurriedly strode over and reached out to stop him. "Commander Shi, there's no need to be so polite. If you're not feeling well, just lie down for a while." "Sigh, actually, I'm fine physically. It's just that I'm mentally tired." Shi Bei spoke to Yang Xi as if he had seen his savior. He had already forgotten to be polite. Although Yang Chendong was a commander and the other party was only a division commander, the other party's surname was Yang. He was one of Yang Chendong's most trusted people. In terms of status, he, as a commander, was far inferior. The other party could become an existence that surpassed him at any time, and he knew this very well in his heart. Yang Xi felt a burst of discomfort in his heart as he listened to Li Dong's words. A general who was good at war and strategizing was forced to lie in bed. This was the work of the investigation team. They really couldn't accomplish anything, but they were good at spoiling things. "Commander Shi, you've been wronged." Yang Xi didn't know what to say. Just one sentence was enough to make this general, who had killed in all directions on the battlefield and didn't even frown in the face of death, cry. A good man with iron bones couldn't stand being wronged the most. At this moment, Shi Bei seemed to have found a soulmate. He stepped forward and held Yang Xi's hand tightly. Division Commander Yang, please tell the 6th young master that I've never really betrayed the 5-star army. Alright, I will. I definitely will. Yang Si also replied with a face full of excitement. He deeply felt the weakness in Shi Bei's heart at this moment and decided to tell him a piece of good news. Commander Shi, I've already detained the people from the investigation team. After I see you, I'll send a telegram to the young master and explain the situation here in detail. Is there anything else you want to pass along? What? The people from the investigation team were detained? Shi Bei's face was filled with shock after hearing this. It was just an investigation team of 6 people. Of course, Shi Bei didn't care about them. Any random team in the new Second Army could easily take care of them. However, the problem was that they were sent by the headquarters. They were the orders of City Lord Yu Qian. Yang Chendong also acquiesced. This gave them a lot of glory. They were like imperial envoys holding an imperial sword. No one dared to provoke them. They didn't even care about commanders and division commanders. Such people were actually detained by Yang Si. Shi Bei wasn't happy at this moment, but worried. He pulled Yang Si's hand and said, Division Commander Yang, I'm afraid this isn't appropriate. After all, they did find out some problems. The problem Shi Bei was talking about was Tan Ing, the deputy commander of the 2nd Regiment of the new 2nd Army's 1st Cavalry Division. This person was the first person the investigation team called to talk to. The facts proved that they weren't shooting at random. This person was actually Bai Ming's man. To be specific, he really surrendered when the new 2nd Army pretended to surrender to Bai Ming. He became Bai Ming's spy in the new 2nd Army. It was because the Disciplinary Investigation Department obtained this information that they sent the investigation team. They also obtained City Lord Yu Qian's consent and Yang Chendong's acquiescence. It was also because of this that Muda dared to detain the 1st Cavalry Division's commander, Kong Ji. It was also because of this. It was also because of this that Shi Bei couldn't raise his head. This was because he couldn't guarantee that there weren't any Bai Ming spies in the new 2nd Army. This also made the investigation team open and aboveboard. The problem wasn't discovered by them. It was our intelligence department that obtained this clue first and then reported it to the headquarters. Then, it was handed over to the Disciplinary Investigation Department to handle. At the end of the day, Muda and the others only benefited from this information. Yes, that Tan Ing deserves to die. He actually ate our 5-star army's food and worked for Bai Ming. However, this doesn't mean that the other officers are the same. We can't spoil the whole pot of soup because of a piece of rat **T, don't worry, I know how to report this to the young master. Yang Si said seriously. These words were said with reluctance, and he kept nodding his head. Obviously, he agreed with this statement. Seeing that Shi Bei agreed with his opinion, Yang Si hesitated for a moment before saying, But Commander Shi, after Tan Ying's incident, we still have to investigate. My opinion is that we can transfer the new 2nd Army's officers in batches. After we confirm that there are no problems, we can arrange for them to be transferred to new positions. This was the main reason why Yang Si had come to look for other people. No matter what, Shi Bei was still the commander of the new 2nd Army. If they were to move her officers, and it was a big move, it was reasonable for them to inform her first. Of course, we won't move the main officers. We also won't move those officers who have already been checked and confirmed that there are no problems. Yang Si was afraid that Shi Bei wouldn't understand, so he made a promise overnight. They could move the officers, but they couldn't move too many of them. Otherwise, it would really hurt the new 2nd Army's foundation. Yang Si wanted to continue explaining because he wanted to lower Shi Bei's guard. If even the commander couldn't figure it out, then the new 2nd Army's ability to work would definitely drop. What Yang Si didn't expect was that right after he finished speaking, Shi Bei already nodded in agreement before he could even say some comforting words. Division Commander Yang Si, I wholeheartedly agree with this matter. After going through this crisis, the new 2nd Army can't be messed up anymore. The headquarters is willing to screen them for us. This will save us a lot of work. Shi Bei actually agreed. Yang Si said somewhat embarrassedly, Commander Shi, these are your heartfelt words. You can't let your emotions affect your decisions. Of course they are heartfelt words. First, there was Su Yuan in the new Second Army, and now there's Tan Ning. To be honest, I'm almost too ashamed to face anyone. If the headquarters can investigate the background of these officers, it's of course a good thing for the new Second Army's combat power. Oh right, I have one more request. Sure enough, Shi Bei still had a backup plan. Yang Si didn't immediately agree. Instead, he said with a smile, Commander Shi, there are no outsiders here. Just say what you want. Then I'll say it. I only have one request. Can you let the new Second Army participate in the war? Only in war can we quickly gather people's hearts. Shi Bei said with a face full of hope. He stared at Yang Si's eyes fiercely. Hearing that he wanted to participate in the war, Yang Si shook his head. He could understand Shi Bei's feelings, but such a big matter was far from being decided by him. The most important thing was that now the new Second Army's problem hadn't been thoroughly investigated. No one would be at ease to let such an army rush to the front line. If there was a betrayal before the battle, wouldn't it really cost people's lives? Yang Si had such a thought in his mind, but some words couldn't be said like this. He found an excuse and said, I'm afraid this matter is not easy to handle. Commander Shi is also a person who has fought in wars. You should know the importance of logistics and provisions. Right now, Shaojing and Jingzhou are the main transit points for logistical supplies. Your new Second Army is very familiar with the situation here. If another army were to take over, I'm afraid it would be very easy for problems to arise. Of course, this was a reason. Shi Bei could understand the meaning behind these words. In fact, when he made the request, he didn't have much confidence. He said these words to prove his determination. Yang Si immediately rejected, and Shi Bei didn't mention it again. No matter what, the investigation team's people were detained, which was a good thing for the new Second Army. This was because the investigation team was clearly biased. Under the preconceived idea that everyone had problems, it was quite difficult for them to deal with the new Second Army's problem fairly. After comforting Shi Bei also promised that she would throw herself into work with a new attitude as soon as possible. Yang Si left the new Second Army's military headquarters. At the entrance of the military headquarters, he saw the soldiers he brought with him. Master, the interrogation results are out. There is indeed a problem with Muda, let's go back and talk. Hearing that the results were out so quickly, Yang Si was also very surprised. He didn't know that in front of the fierce and murderous soldiers, Muda, who only knew how to talk big but was very afraid of death, couldn't last more than a few rounds. Chapter 1236. In the royal palace of Turpan, young Chendong was looking at the military situation map in front of the sand table. Beta Persei came to his side and whispered, Young master, Yang Si sent an urgent message, it's about the disciplinary investigation department. Urgent? Yang Chendong slowly turned around when he heard this. Something big must have happened to be able to add the word urgent before the telegram. Yes, this is the content of the telegram, Beta Persei said as he respectfully handed the telegram he had just received to Yang Chendong. Although Beta Persei and Yang Si had a good relationship. But if it wasn't for the urgency of the matter, he wouldn't dare to disturb Yang Chendong, who was thinking about military combat plans. To be able to do this, it could only prove one thing, that something big had happened. Yang Chendong took the telegram, and after the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the telegram was fiercely thrown to the ground. What does this Meng Ziliao want to do? Does he want to disrupt the morale of my army? The so-called Meng Ziliao was the vice minister of the disciplinary investigation department, second only to Chief Guan Wenjing. Because he was very filial, learned a lot of literature, and wrote good essays, he was valued by Yu Qian and several other officials in Qiqian City. After a period of experience in other departments, they found that he was a talent, and this time, they recommended him to be the first vice minister of the disciplinary investigation department. It could be said that he held great power and reached the sky in one step. From this point, it could also be seen that Confucianism still had a deep influence on Yu Qian and others, and this was also unchangeable. After all, how could something that had been passed down for thousands of years be changed just like that? But this person, because he was too filial, this time, he actually used his power for personal gain and helped his elder brother, the vice minister of the Army Staff Division, Meng Ziliao. It was said that Meng Zitong was also a capable person. He had a good grasp of the battle situation and had a good view of the overall situation. He had once been praised by Leng Song, the deputy commander of the army headquarters. He had also been recommended to Yang Chendong more than once. However, Yang Chendong considered that this person did not have any experience in leading troops. Everything he learned was just theory. Hence, he did not give him any important tasks, citing that there was no suitable position. Of course, Meng Zitong didn't know that this was Yang Chendong's excuse. He thought that there was really no suitable position. Therefore, he had been waiting. This time, the 5-star army had consecutively established the 5 new armies, the First Army and the Second Army in the primordial city. All of a sudden, there were 3 vacancies for commanders, so he had no choice but to consider it. For this reason, he pestered Leng Song every day, and basically obtained his support. Meng Zitong never expected that Yang Chendong would have the final say in this matter. Other than some division commanders, deputy division commanders, and regimental commanders who were transferred from the army headquarters, the 3 corps commanders were all personally appointed by him. This made Meng Zitong very disappointed. Originally, there should have been a position for him among the 3 corps commanders. This huge contrast from hope to disappointment made him unable to bear it. However, what made him even more disappointed was that the 3 corps commanders in the new army that was about to be established would also be selected from the current division commanders. This made him unable to see the future for a while. When he returned home, he sighed because of this. All of this was seen by his younger brother, Meng Zitong. This Meng Zitong, who was extremely filial to his parents and had deep feelings for his elder brother, after a psychological struggle, set his goal on the position of the new Second Army's commander. Wasn't there no problem? Then he would use his authority to create a position. As long as he was willing to step down, the position of the corps commander would be vacant. Considering that there was such a big problem with the new Second Army, it should not be internally elected. The possibility of external transfer was very high. In this way, wouldn't his elder brother have hope? In order to complete this matter, Meng Zitong sent his trusted aides, Mu De and Jianghu, to be the leader and deputy leader of the investigation team respectively. The reason why he sent out 2 people at once was probably because one of them did not do his best and the other could be a substitute. However, he did not expect that because he sent out 2 people, Jianghu would be the first to confess when faced with Yang Xi's personal interrogation. Then, under pressure, Mu De repeated Meng Zitong's instructions to him. That was the main content of the telegram. Yang Xi was very sensible. He only described the process of the matter and did not make any suggestions on how to deal with it. Even so, Yang Chendong was burning with anger. The reason why he agreed to the investigation team's investigation in the new Second Army was because of Su Yuan and now Tanning. Yang Chendong did not want any traitors in the army. He still needed to be on guard when fighting against external forces. In addition, Yu Qian was the one who suggested it, so he did not refuse. Now, it seemed that some people had taken advantage of the loophole. Did they really think that he was so easy to use? Yang Feidian. Yang Chendong's face was filled with anger, and his eyes flashed with anger. Telegram Yang Wu and ask him to investigate this matter secretly. If it's true, send Meng Zitong to prison for abusing their power for personal gain and convict them because of City Lord Qian. Yang Chendong's voice carried a trace of viciousness. It was true that these 2 people were talented. Once they were used well, they might be able to do a lot of work or even big things. However, this could not be the reason why they could use their power for personal gain. He wanted to use this matter to tell everyone that in Yangxia and the 5-star army, there were many capable people, but loyalty was more important. If there was no loyalty and a selfish person in their heart, no matter how capable they were, no one would value them. Beta Persei wrote down the contents of the telegram and turned to leave. Of course, he had also heard of these two people. For example, Meng Zitong. Leng Song had once looked for Beta Persei and recommended this person. But so what if they were capable? They dared to use public power for personal gain and even wanted to frame a current army commander. Just based on this, the two of them would probably not be able to get out of prison for more than 10 or 20 years. The telegram was sent very quickly. In just 3 days, Yang Wu, who had received the order, had investigated the matter clearly. Receiving Yang Chendong's order was like receiving an imperial sword. Everything he did was green light. When the evidence was conclusive, the two brothers, Meng Zitong and Meng Zitong, were taken away from their respective offices. Taking away two vice commanders at once, and both of them held important positions and were even blood brothers, this matter quickly caused a huge commotion in Crimson City. For this reason, after City Lord Yu Qian heard the news, he personally asked about this matter. Soon, Yang Wu went to meet Yu Qian, Ling Song, and the others respectively. When he left, these people who were found were all covered in cold sweat. They had actually used their power for personal gain to this extent. They actually wanted to frame a military commander in public, and a military commander who had performed meritorious deeds. Whether it was Yu Qian, Ling Song, or the others, they were all covered in cold sweat. These two people were recommended by them. More importantly, from the beginning of the investigation until the arrest of this matter, no one had informed them. What did this prove? Yang Chendong was already very dissatisfied with this matter. This was what made them feel afraid. Immediately, Yu Qian and the others quickly wrote a letter of apology and sent it to Yang Chendong in the form of a telegram. In this regard, Yang Chendong did not reply and acted as if this matter had never happened. The reason why he did this was because Yang Wu had called and said that this matter was completely the fault of the Meng brothers. City Lord Yu Qian and the others had no idea at all. In the end, they were just being used by others. Since that was the case, why would Yang Chendong reply? Not replying was also a kind of attitude. Think about it yourselves. The matter was handled so badly, the most important thing to consider was how to correct it in the future. When this matter was revealed, those who knew the inside story were in an uproar, especially those who were arrogant because of their talents. They even tucked their tails between their legs. Who said that you had to be valued by others just because you were talented? Once you did something wrong, the building would collapse in an instant. This rang the alarm bell for many people, and it also made the atmosphere between the various departments in Crimson City correct. Things like private power being used in public were naturally reduced by a lot. The strategy of making a show of the mountain to scare the tiger was very effective. Since there was a problem with Muda's investigation team, as the chief, Guan Wenjing, quickly sent a new investigation team. This time, there were more than 30 members in the investigation team. They did things according to the principles of openness and fairness. Soon, the new Second Army was on the right track after changing a batch of officers. After the investigation team concluded that there was no problem, Kong Ji was acquitted and restored to his position. There was also the company commander, Li Yun. Just like his name, his luck was good. He was actually chosen by Yang Si and transferred to the logistics division as an advisor. It could be imagined that after a period of experience, it was likely that he would be able to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat when he was sent out. The new Second Army resumed its normal order. More and more troops, civilians, and provisions were transported from here to Ili. The war was about to begin. Ala Mountain Pass. After the 1st Cavalry Division led by Dai Kuo left Turpan City, they rushed towards their destination. Not long after he set off, 30,000 cavalrymen also came out of Ili City. They were Tushi's troops who were responsible for watching the 1st Cavalry Division under the order of King Harden Barter. Tushi was a general of the younger generation of Turpan. Because he was chosen by King Harden Barter, he was promoted from an ordinary commander who led thousands of troops to a general who led 30,000 cavalrymen. For a moment, he was full of pride and confidence for the future. As soon as he sent out a division, the other side sent out 3 times the number of troops to follow closely behind. When the news was reported to Yang Qindong, his eyes showed an expression of, as expected. Yang Qindong had considered 3 solutions for the main force of the 1st Cavalry Division being surrounded at the Ala Mountain Pass. First, use the 1st Cavalry Division as a bait to attract more enemies, and finally have a decisive battle in the middle. Second, let the 1st Cavalry Division break out of the encirclement. Presumably, with their strength and preparation, for times the number of enemies really couldn't do anything to them. Then they would look for an opportunity to fight again. Third, no matter what, gather a large number of troops and continue to attack. Besieging Wei to save Zhao would naturally solve the problem of the 1st Cavalry Division being surrounded. Chapter 1237. The 3 plans constantly lingered in Yang Qindong's mind, but in the end, he still chose the first plan. The second plan was a passive defense, which was not what Yang Qindong liked. The third plan was a little too risky, especially when the reinforcements were still on the way and had yet to arrive. It was a little rash. Only the second plan required a certain amount of time to prepare. He could take the opportunity to wait for more reinforcements to appear and fight a big battle. Just like how Yang Qindong didn't know that Kazakh had dispatched 80,000 cavalry, his enemies also didn't know that there were 3 5-star army reinforcements coming to Ili County. Send a signal to Commander Dai Qua, tell him to slow down and delay for some time. At the same time, order the reconnaissance group and the light cavalry to set off. I want to see how many troops they will send. Yang Qindong slammed his right fist on the sand table and said in a firm tone. After the order was issued, Ding Shan led the reconnaissance group and Ma Xiangshan led the light cavalry, a total of 10,000 cavalry, to Lufan City. As soon as the news came out, General Aleifu of the Yarqiang tribe also led 30,000 cavalry to follow. It was the same as the 1st Cavalry Division that followed Dai Qua before. 3 times the number of troops surrounded them. Interesting. Looking at the 3 times the number of troops, Yang Qindong smiled and looked at Beta Persei and said, Su He's new army should have rested enough. Send them out, I want to see if they can send 100,000 troops. After the order was issued, the new army under the leadership of Commander Su He went out. As if to confirm Yang Qindong's words, the Walla cavalry suddenly sent 100,000 troops, led by one of the 4 remaining generals, Bo Muir, and followed. Oh! I almost forgot about my old friend Yeshen. Yang Qindong immediately laughed when he heard the news. Then he narrowed his eyes and said, Send a message to the commander of the 1st Army, Su Ku. Tell him to attack the Walla army directly from behind and find an opportunity to destroy the enemy. On the current battlefield, it seemed that the anti-5-star army alliance had the upper hand. They had 240,000 troops. On the other hand, the 5-star army only had about 70,000 soldiers. This 3 times the number of the 5-star army seemed to be enough to defeat the 5-star army. However, once the 1st army joined the battle, they would have 30,000 soldiers. Then, the 2nd army and the 5-star armies would add up to another 70,000 soldiers. In total, they had 100,000 soldiers. The difference in military strength would be from 240,000 to 170,000. There would only be a difference of 70,000 people. Most of the soldiers on his side were veterans, while the other side had many new recruits. With the combat strength of the 5-star soldiers, this was no longer a problem. If they could heavily injure the 240,000 enemy troops, they would be able to destroy at least a third of the enemy's army. Yang Qindong had his own plans, but what he didn't know was that the enemy also had their own plans. Their target was him, the founder of the Yangxia Empire, the soul of the 5-star army, and the Bugnam of Gojoseon of the Great Ming Dynasty. They would use the 1st Cavalry Division at the Ala Mountain Pass as a gap to surround them. Then, they would lure in a large portion of the 5-star army's main force and destroy them. They would be the first target of the anti-5-star army alliance. Since there was a first, there would be a second. The second was to surround the Turpan Empire's capital, where Yangqindong was. In order to achieve this goal, Lily, Turpan, and Yarqiang would each send out 20,000 troops. Yeshen would send out 40,000 troops, which was all of his remaining troops. Adding on the 80,000 troops from the Kazakh army, they had a total of 180,000 people. They were only attacking a single capital, so they were filled with confidence. The five-star army sending out their troops did not surprise Yeshen and the others. In their eyes, it would be strange if Yangqindong didn't send out his troops. After all, the 1st Cavalry Division was the elite force of the five-star army. They couldn't just watch and do nothing. With their advantage in numbers, as long as the five-star army sent out reinforcements, Lily and the others would send out 3 times the number of reinforcements. At the same time, the dark plan was to take advantage of the fact that Turpan City did not have enough troops to attack. If they could take down Yangqindong, the five-star army would be torn apart. In order to complete this plan, Yeshen was going all out. Not only did he send out all of his 140,000 cavalry, but he also used the 100 cannons that he had bought from Baiming. In short, he wanted Yangqindong to die. A mountain could not accommodate 2 tigers. There could only be 1 king on the grasslands. In Yeshen's eyes, Yangqindong was the biggest obstacle to him becoming the king. What he needed to do now was to kill this person who was the biggest threat to him. After that, he would regain his position as the overlord of the grasslands. Turpan City. A large number of the five-star army was sent out. Until now, Yangqindong only had the 20,000 Mongol army and the 2,000 black cavalry by his side. Oh right, there was also the 4th Division, who was escorting a large number of rations and other military resources to Turpan City. The reason why he did not send Narisong out was because this cavalry was made up of various Mongol tribes. Although there were many of them, their combat strength was a level lower. Such a cavalry force would not have a problem winning a battle. However, once they were surrounded, it would be difficult for them to form an independent army. If they were sent out and surrounded, it would be very dangerous. They would be the first army to be attacked by the enemy. Yangqindong didn't want Narisong's 20,000 cavalrymen to fall into the danger of being surrounded and killed. Moreover, they hadn't occupied Lufan City for a long time, so the city still needed to be stabilized. The security of the 200,000 people in the city also needed someone to stay behind and manage. The ones left behind were not the strongest. Yangqindong didn't want them to charge into battle with the enemy, but they could still be used to maintain order in the city and manage the ordinary people. It had to be said that in a foreign land, they could not unleash the full strength of the five-star army. Just managing the hearts of the people required a lot of effort. When Yangqindong did not want Narisong's 20,000 Mongol cavalry to be surrounded, they were still surrounded. Moreover, they were surrounded along with Yangqindong. The news came from the Security Bureau and the CIA. Turpan, Ili, and Yarqiang had each sent out 20,000 cavalry, and their target was Turpan City. They're finally here? Towards this news, Yangqindong was not surprised. Since he could surround Turpan City, why couldn't the enemy do the same? It was just that he did not think much of it. It was just 60,000 Mongol cavalry. How could it be so easy to take down Turpan City? Although Narisong's Mongol army was not strong, they could still defend against 60,000 Mongol cavalry. Yangqindong had never been a careless person. As a precaution, he still gave the order to the 4th Master Lu, who was rushing over to the capital of Turkmenistan, to speed up the operation and report back to him as soon as possible. Once he had the 4th Lu Division by his side, Yangqindong would not be afraid of anyone attacking the city. The telegram was sent out, and there was a reply very quickly. However, it was not good news. Commander Ling Decheng said that there were at least 40,000 Mongol cavalry around them. If not for the firearms in their hands, they would have charged over long ago. However, these Mongol cavalry still relied on the speed of their warhorses and their proficient riding skills to fire arrows from time to time, slowing down the 4th Lu Division's advance. Commander Ling Decheng also said that at this rate, it would take them at least 10 days to reach Turpan City. 10 days? That's enough. Send a telegram to Commander Ling Dechang. Tell him to play it safe and not act rashly. Yang Chendong snorted. He had already guessed that the ones blocking the 4th Lu Division were Yeshen's Wara. Were they finally unable to bear it anymore? But so what if they slowed down the 4th Lu Division's advance? They were a fully equipped Mongol cavalry master, not someone that could be touched by 40,000 Mongol cavalry masters. Otherwise, they would not be able to return. As long as he defended Turpan City to the death for 10 days, once the 4th Lu Division arrived, the siege would collapse on its own. At this moment, Yang Chendong was still full of confidence, but he never expected that everything would change in the afternoon. Before the 60,000 cavalry from the other 3 countries arrived, 80,000 cavalry had already appeared outside Turpan, surrounding the city so tightly that not even a drop of water could escape. If not for the fact that Yang Chendong was cautious and gave the order to close the city gates, these 80,000 Mongol cavalry masters would have taken the opportunity to charge into the city. However, even if they did not attack immediately, the appearance of these 80,000 Mongol cavalry masters was still out of Yang Chendong's expectations. Shortly after, General Song also reported that in this short period of time, many civilians in the city had suddenly launched a counterattack against the Mongol army. Although the number of casualties was not high, it took up a lot of their energy and they were unable to fully defend the city. The civilians of Turpan City did not have the time to move out. They had only been informed of the relevant policies and laws. If not for the siege outside, these civilians might have approved of Yang Xie's actions. But now, even if they were rescued by their own people, most of them still wanted to return to Turpan City. No matter how Turpan treated them in the past, this was still their roots. Not everyone would forget about righteousness for the sake of profit. Many of them had their own standards, and many of them were unwilling to leave their homeland. Inform Commander Dao Shao to send out his 2nd Battalion to patrol the streets. If there are any provocations, kill them. Yang Chendong's eyes flashed with anger. He was willing to think for the civilians of Turpan City not because he was afraid of them, but because he wanted to integrate all of them. That's right, it was the integration of all races, not the unity of all races. Yang Chendong did not believe that different races could live well together without any conflicts. The only reason why they had not appeared was because the time was not right. Chapter 1238. In order to prevent future troubles and to create a harmonious environment for future generations, Yang Chendong wanted there to be only one nation and one nation in this world. When everyone was a part of it, they would forget their previous identities. After 2 or 3 generations, they would slowly get used to it. This way, the so-called differences between nations would slowly disappear. Of course, in order to achieve this, there must be a prerequisite. The farmers must have their own land, the merchants must have their own products, and the workers must have their own strength. All in all, everyone would have food to eat, everyone would have work to do, and everyone would be able to live a better life through their own efforts. Yang Chendong wanted to use his own efforts to let the citizens live a better life. Even if it was a foreign race, he would not be too prejudiced. The prerequisite was that the Han people's rights would not be harmed, and they would not be treated unfairly. In fact, they would even be treated better than others. He believed that if this continued, there would be a day when the world would belong to the Han people. However, this did not mean that he was afraid of these foreign people, especially those who opposed him. If they went overboard, he would not mind killing one as an example to others. Just like now, it was a special period. With the sudden appearance of external enemies, he would not allow any internal problems to occur. After Dao Shao received the order, he excitedly led 1,000 black cavalry soldiers out of the palace. When they arrived on the streets, their murderous aura frightened many people. Some people who originally wanted to take advantage of the situation could not help but reveal shocked expressions. They were already considering whether it was appropriate to make a move now. However, there were always some people who did not believe in heresy. Some of them were staunch nationalists who only wanted to be Turkmen. Even if they had to die, they would die here. There were also some people who had opportunistic thoughts. They had seen how the 5-star army treated the citizens. Not only did they not oppress them, they even helped the citizens. This was something that they had never seen before. Because of this, these people did not believe that the previously benevolent 5-star army would suddenly turn hostile. When these two types of people gathered together, they decisively made their move when they saw the black cavalry passing through the streets in an orderly manner to restore order and security in the city. They rushed towards the black cavalry with sticks and some iron weapons. They were challenging the dignity of the 5-star army and challenging Yang Chendong's bottom line. Stop. Anyone who comes within 10 meters will be killed. The awe-inspiring Blade Howl did not immediately give the order to kill. Instead, he gave the enemy a chance to retreat. However, such kindness was seen as weakness by some people. Some of the red-eyed people ignored Dao Zhao's warning and continued to charge forward. There were even some people shooting arrows in the dark. Obviously, they wanted to muddy the waters and fish in troubled waters to reap the benefits. Arrows pierced through the air and landed in the midst of the black cavalry. Some of the arrows even hit the bodies of the Black Knight Dragon Guards, but they were all blocked by the black armor made of fine iron that had extremely strong defensive properties. There were still people charging forward and shooting arrows. At this moment, anger flashed across Dao Zhao's face. He spat out a word, "Kill." The black cavalry, who had long been enraged and could not wait any longer, immediately drew their bows and arrows and launched a counterattack at the targets in their eyes. A series of arrows were reflected and dozens of shouts came from the darkness. Those were the people who wanted to shoot arrows. Cries of agony rang out on the streets. Over 60 bandits with various weapons had been shot by arrows, and there were still some who had not died. At this moment, loud cries of pain came from their mouths. The black cavalry retaliated. The moment they attacked, it was like a thunderbolt. They did not have the slightest intention of holding back. This scene frightened many people. Human nature was often like this. The more you retreated, the more they would think that you were weak and easy to bully. They would then become even more vicious and act like an evil person. On the other hand, once you acted tough, they would feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. At this time, they would become docile sheep, waiting to be slaughtered and dealt with. The black cavalry's sudden counterattack obviously had the effect of the latter. In an instant, many people shut their mouths. Many people in the dark put down their weapons. They were shocked and frightened by such a decisive action. Patrol the streets in groups of 50. If there are similar cases, kill. Dao Zhao's eyes did not show any signs of weakness. He knew that blindly killing would not solve the problem. However, there were times when showing off one's fists was very effective. Just like now. Everyone was looking at him in shock. The murderous aura that he had felt before had subconsciously lessened. This was the benefit of killing to stop killing. After the order was given, groups of black cavalry instantly went far away and headed to other nearby streets. To be able to become the capital of Tulipan, the city was not small. The places that they needed to patrol were also very wide. Dao Xiao did not leave. Instead, he stayed with a group of 50 people. Behind them were the Mongolian cavalry and some Tulipan youths who had volunteered to join the 5-star army. They were busy clearing the streets. It was just like how there had been traitors in China. There were people who lowered their heads to the strong everywhere. Although these people did not have any backbone, wasn't this what Yang Chendong needed? The appearance of the second group of black cavalry instantly suppressed the chaos in Tulipan's capital. Occasionally, there were some who managed to escape. However, at this moment, they could only hide in dark corners and did not dare to do anything. After the internal problems were dealt with, the next step was to deal with the external enemies. Very soon, a piece of news reached Yang Chendong's ears. Apart from the 20,000 Walla cavalry that was personally led by Yes Hen, there were 60,000 cavalry that belonged to the Kazakh Khanate. Of course, Yang Chendong was not unfamiliar with the Kazakh Khanate. After all, this was the next place that he wanted to conquer. From the information that the intelligence department had sent over, the Kazakh Khanate was currently at war and had not been completely unified. Now, it seemed that the intelligence was lagging behind. Speaking of which, this could not be blamed on the intelligence department. Yang Chendong's speed in conquering the Kazakh Khanate had greatly exceeded the expectations of many people. It was the same for the intelligence department. They had only been established for less than 10 years and did not have a strong foundation. Furthermore, the Kazakh Khanate was simply too far away from Yang Xie's sphere of influence. No one had thought that they would meet in such a short period of time and even go to war. Naturally, the intelligence department there was limited, so it was normal that they did not send back any timely information. Looks like this Yes Hen is becoming more and more mature. Yang Chendong's reaction was so fast that he instantly thought of a lot of things, including the fact that the 1st Cavalry Division was surrounded by a large number of troops. It must have been planned a long time ago. One part of the plan was to kill him. 80,000 cavalry surrounded the city, but he only had 20,000 B-class troops and 2,000 black cavalry troops. But in the end, the number was still too small. Now, he had to face 80,000 cavalry, and then there would be the support of 60,000 cavalry from the other 3 countries. The situation was very bad no matter how he looked at it. Young Master, immediately send a report to the new army and ask Commander Su He to lead the troops back. Beta Persei also felt an unprecedented tension and could not help but give an idea. No. Yang Chendong shook his head. He also thought of this method just now, but then he rejected it. Since he could think of it, how could the enemy not think of it? They had also sent out 100,000 Walla soldiers, but they were right behind the new Third Army. If they were to turn back at this time, a bloody battle would be inevitable. Although the new army's strength was not bad, the 100,000 Walla army were also elite cavalry. With 3 times the number difference, it would not be easy to deal with them. If they were not careful, they would be surrounded and eaten. Seeing that Yang Chendong rejected the suggestion, Beta Persei said anxiously, then send a signal to the commander of the 4th Division and ask him to speed up the march and come back as reinforcements. No. Yang Chendong rejected again. The 4th Division had the heavy responsibility of escorting the provisions. There were a total of 1,000 carriages of military supplies, all of which were needed by the 5-star army when they ventured deep into the inner regions in the future. There was no room for any mishaps. Otherwise, the soldiers would have no food and no pay. How could such an army display their fighting strength? This would not do, that would not do. For a moment, Beta Persei was anxious. His mission was to protect Yang Chendong's safety. He did not dare to imagine what would happen if something happened to the young master. He was afraid that even if he did not blame himself, the other brothers would take his life. Seeing that things were not going well, he could only take a step back and say, "Young master, then we will give up on the capital of Turpan. While the encirclement is not fully formed yet, our 2,000 black cavalry will protect you and open a bloody path." No. Right now, a lot of provisions and gold and silver have been hoarded in the capital. Although most of these were left behind by Harden Barter when he escaped, they are now in our hands. These things are ours, we can't hand them over. After Yang Chendong rejected the idea, Beta Persei was speechless. If it was any other time, he would inevitably say that they valued money more than their lives. Beta Persei finally stopped talking. He turned to Yang Chendong and said with a smile, "Well, you don't have to worry. The enemy hasn't attacked yet. You have to have confidence in yourself and in our warriors." Beta Persei smiled bitterly. Obviously, he thought that this was the young master's way of comforting him. With 22,000 people, he had to face 80,000, no. It was 140,000 cavalry. He really had no chance of winning. Okay, since that's the case, send a telegram to Ling Daqiang. Tell him about the situation here and ask him to send an advance march here. Well, don't forget to remind him that if anything goes wrong with the money and food, he will lose his position as a division commander. Also, don't inform the other army, division, or regimental units about the encirclement. Yang Chendong said with a very serious face. He knew too well that if he didn't say it harshly, once Ling Daqiang knew that they were in danger, he would definitely bring his army to kill them. If that was the case, the money and food would be taken advantage of by the enemy cavalry. This was something that Yang Chendong absolutely didn't want to see. Seeing that Yang Chendong had agreed, Beta Persei's face lit up with joy. After agreeing, he ran straight to the dispatch room. Chapter 1239. The 4th Division of the Lu Army. It had a total of 8,400 soldiers. However, such an army of less than 10,000 was escorting 1,000 carriages of food and fodder pulled by livestock on the land of a foreign country, and no one dared to provoke them. Just like now, they could see the silhouettes of cavalrymen in the distance, but they did not dare to get close to this army. It wasn't because of anything else, but because just 2 hours ago, a Kazakh Khanate cavalry squad of 300 intended to charge over from a relatively narrow area, but they were indeed routed 200 meters away. 200 meters was the time when the muskets showed their prowess and bows were powerless. None of the 300 cavalrymen survived, all of them killed by bullets. This scene shocked many people, and it also made the Kazakh Khanate cavalrymen cower. Of the 40,000 cavalrymen that surrounded the 4th Division, there were 20,000 Walla cavalrymen and 20,000 Kazakh Khanate cavalrymen. However, facing the 4th Division of the Lu Army, the Walla cavalrymen who had already suffered countless losses naturally did not dare to act rashly. Instead, it was the Kazakh Khanate cavalrymen who charged forward. In the end, they suffered a huge loss. Because of this, General Gu Lijiang had no choice but to give the order to follow from afar and not get close. The blood of the 300 corpses had not dried up yet, and with this as an example, no one dared to take the initiative to approach. This allowed the 4th Division of the Lu Army to proceed forward safely. When General Gu Lijiang saw this scene, he was furious. He went to find the general of the Walla cavalrymen, the deputy general that Yeshen trusted a lot, Chao Lu. General Chao Lu, the 5-star army's muskets are so powerful. What's the point of us following them? This was what Gu Lijiang could not understand. Since they could not get close, what were the 40,000 people doing here? To watch the show? If he knew this would happen, he would have followed the army to attack Turpan. That way, the siege would be faster. Compared to Gu Lijiang's dissatisfaction and impatience, Chao Lu's face was calm and unhurried. General Gu Lijiang, there's no need to be anxious. Since the leader asked us to come here, he naturally has his reasons. Don't worry, we will be needed soon. Chao Lu was right. At this moment, the temporary headquarters of the 4th Division was indeed in an uproar. Beta Persei had sent a telegram. When he found out that Turpan city was surrounded by a large number of troops and that Yang Chendong only had 20,000 Mongolian cavalry besides the 2,000 black cavalry, De Chang was shocked. He immediately ordered the commanders to come to a meeting. He even had the urge to give up everything to rescue Yang Chendong, because he knew very well that without the 6th young master, what would happen to the 5-star army in the future? The 4 regimental commanders were confused. When they arrived at the temporary headquarters, they wanted to ask what had happened. However, when they saw Division Commander De Chang's face, which was as dark as the night, they didn't dare to ask. Instead, their gazes landed on a telegram beside the table. Out of curiosity, the first commander, Gao Xiang, reached out and took the telegram. He originally thought that it wasn't important, otherwise, it wouldn't have been thrown here. But when he read the contents of the telegram, his eyes widened and his breathing became heavy. Sir, my 1st regiment requests to go to battle. What's going on? The other 3 regiment commanders also walked over in succession, surprised by Regiment Commander Gao Xiang's reaction. However, when they all saw the contents of the telegram, they all had the same reaction. 2nd Regiment Commander He Wen, 3rd Regiment Commander Lu Zheng, and 4th Regiment Commander Yi Xingfeng all shouted in unison, Division Commander, our 2nd Regiment, 3rd Regiment, 4th Regiment, requests for battle. All of you, shut up. Ling Dechang was very satisfied with his subordinate's performance, but he immediately stopped them. Now that the sixth young master is in danger, even if he requests to go to battle, it won't be your turn. I've thought about it, I'll personally lead the team. When he said that he would personally lead the team, the four commanders were first stunned, then they all objected in unison. No. Why not? Ling Dechang had already thought of this result, but at this moment, he had already made up his mind. Even if he had to risk being punished, he wouldn't change his mind. It just won't do. The sixth young master once said that unless it's necessary, a division-level leader can't personally go to the battlefield. Although the situation is dangerous now, there's no need for you to personally lead the team. The first commander, Gao Xiang, was the first to come up with a reason to object. Compared to the other commanders, Gao Xiang, as the first commander, was undoubtedly the strongest. He was also someone who had been recognized by Yang Chendong, just like the other commanders who could only address Yang Chendong as Bugnam of Gojoseon, but he could already be called the sixth young master. This change in address represented a difference in status. Yes, now is not the time for the survival of the 4th Division Lu, so you can't personally lead the troops. The other three commanders also expressed their opinions. On one hand, everyone was indeed concerned about Ling Dechang's safety, but the most important thing was that they wanted to snatch this job. Once he was going to lead the team, they naturally wouldn't have a chance. Ling Dechang was naturally aware of the thoughts of the four commanders under him. However, he didn't point it out. Instead, he said, "I've made up my mind, so you don't have to persuade me anymore. Of course, I still need an assistant. Which of the four of you is willing to go with me?" Ling Dechang had his own ideas. In the telegram, Yang Chendong said that he couldn't lose the provisions. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to be a division commander anymore. However, he didn't say that he couldn't lead the troops to save people. He took advantage of this loophole and decided to personally lead the troops. This also represented his respect and protection for Yang Chendong. Originally, the four commanders wanted to continue persuading Ling Dechang to let go, but now, the moment he said that he still needed an assistant, the mentality of the four commanders immediately changed. Even if they couldn't be the main commander, it was still an extremely honorable thing to be the assistant commander. At that moment, the four commanders immediately started fighting for this position. They went back and forth, talking about their own advantages and the opponent's disadvantages. It was very lively. Yang Chendong was in Turpan City, which had already been surrounded. It was extremely urgent, so Ling Dechang didn't want to listen to the commanders below continue fighting. He immediately shouted loudly, "Enough, don't say any more. How about this, I'll pick the generals. First commander, Gao Xiang. Here." When his name was called, Gao Xiang was full of energy. He was very happy, thinking that his division commander really thought the most highly of him. Gao Xiang's strength is outstanding, and he does things with ease. He will replace this division commander and continue to escort the provisions to Turpan City. 2nd Regiment will cooperate with him. 3rd and 4th Regiments will follow me to Turpan City to resolve the situation. Ling Dechang was very clear that if these people continued to argue, there would never be a result. He might as well give the order himself. Gao Xiang, who had been called out, had a happy expression. When he heard that his strength was outstanding and he did things with ease, his face bloomed into a smile. However, the next words made him freeze on the spot as if he was struck by lightning. This shouldn't be like this, right? Didn't he already call out his name? 2nd Regiment Commander Hewen also had an ugly expression. He didn't think that he would be left behind. His expression was bitter. Some people were happy, while others were sad. 3rd Regiment Commander Lu Zhang and 4th Regiment Commander Yi Xingfeng's faces were bright. If possible, they wanted to kiss Ling Dechang's face right now to express their excitement. Since the order had been given, naturally it couldn't be changed. Seeing that the 3rd and 4th Regiment commanders had gone to gather the troops, Ling Dechang looked at Gao Xiang and he went and said, "The two of you were left behind because I have high hopes for you. There's only one request. Even if the troops are small, the supplies are not lacking. In order to ensure the completion of the mission, I'll allow you to reach Turpan City a little later. However, the supplies cannot be lacking. Otherwise, you can just wait to become ordinary soldiers. This was the meaning of going all the way. No matter how unwilling Gao Xiang and Hewen were, they had to agree and do their best. Even if the number of troops was small, the mission was still to ensure quality and quantity. Just as the order was given, the 3rd and 4th regiments had already gathered. Every soldier brought 3 sets of ammunition to ensure that they had enough when facing the enemy. With Ling Dechang's order, the 3rd and 4th regiments, as well as the guards of the division headquarters, walked out of the 4th regiment's troops and headed towards Turpan City. At this time, under Turpan City, the 60,000 Kazakh cavalry had already surrounded the city. Kelai finally heaved a sigh of relief. He had long heard that King Wunan of Damyang had a very elite black guard by his side. Their equipment was excellent, and their combat strength was unparalleled. If such an army suddenly charged out of the city, he really didn't have absolute confidence in stopping them. Now that the city was surrounded, the Black Guard still hadn't appeared. This made Kelai overjoyed. At the same time, he laughed heartily at the leader of the Wara, Yeshen, and said, "Great, Bugnam of Gojoseon has already lost his last chance to escape. According to the Han people, he's now a turtle in a jar. Next, he's at our mercy." Yeshen was also very happy. After planning for such a long time, the Kazakh cavalry that was arranged as a backup plan was finally used, and they also blocked Yang Chendong in the city, which made them see a bright future. Yeshen firmly believed that as long as Yang Chendong died, no one in the Great Ming army would be his opponent. At that time, it would be time for him to dominate. Previously, he could severely injure the Great Ming Emperor Zhu Qizhen. If Yang Chendong hadn't appeared, he could have even captured him alive. He believed that he could do the same in the future. The two of them were in a very good mood. At this moment, they should be drinking horse milk and eating mutton. However, before they saw Yang Chendong's head, they suppressed their excitement and sat together to discuss what to do next. You're tuning in to the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.